channel. I have to give a big trigger warning for today's video because I'm going to be talking about manic episodes, psychosis, delusions, and the absolute turmoil that can come to someone's life when they have a mental health emergency such as this. Today I'll be discussing a woman who posted her experience with this type of thing on TikTok this past week, as well as talking a little bit about my own situation and something that I've experienced with a family member who has delusions. So if this is not something you can handle watching today, thanks so much for stopping by. I really appreciate it, friend. If you like commentary videos of the latest and lamest things here on the internet, please like this video and subscribe to my channel. I upload once or twice a month, and I also go live several times a week to play Stardew Valley. So if that's something you're interested in, please come back next time, and no hurt feelings for you having to leave. This is a really heavy subject. I would not want anyone to get triggered by this, and this is your last chance to click off before we get right into the nitty-gritty. I will be telling Birdie's story in chronological order in the same way that she posted it, starting with her first video being posted on August 10th, 2024. Over a 6-day period last week, a woman named Birdie posted her experience on TikTok saying that she was a bit worried about her husband as he was acting a little bit different than normal.
There's something really strange going on with my husband, and I really need some advice from strangers who can give me their unbiased opinion. I don't have a supportive family system to go to in cases like this, and if they did find out anything about this, they would definitely turn it into something to weaponize and use against me. So here we go. Professor Minerva McGonagall is going to be goosing in the background. Please ignore. Or don't, because she's adorable. I've been married for 10 years to one of the good guys. And I know, everybody says that. But when I say that he's one of the good ones, he really is. He's never made me feel pressured to do anything I didn't want to do. He is so respectful, sometimes to a little bit of a fault when I'm asking him to disrespect me just a little bit. He's very kind. He's very concerned with like his impact on anything and everything. He's very conscious. A very introverted, kind of quiet, very tender-hearted kind of person. He doesn't talk a whole lot, but when he does, it's great. It's well thought out, it's logical, it makes sense, it's to the point. He's somebody that has a lot of people's respect because of the way that he speaks and conducts himself. He's somebody that has always been called an old soul since he was a small child.
Birdie explains a little bit about herself, her husband, and the life they have together, so that we have a bit of a baseline to compare to for later on. Birdie also explains a little bit that she doesn't have a good relationship with her family, so she must really rely on her husband for emotional support. We don't have a name for the husband, so I'm just going to call him Mike to make this easier to follow. So Birdie describes her husband Mike as someone who is a good person to a fault, someone who respects her and keeps her in mind throughout the day. But she has been a little more worried lately because he has started saying some things that concern her quite a bit.
That being said, he is antisocial. And this matters for a very specific reason. He's been playing with the ChatGPT app for the past week and talking about it on and off, but I've not paid a whole lot of attention, just thinking, he's just having one of his hyperfixations. We're both neurodivergent and go through spells where we hyperfixate on something. And his is usually technology. So I was just thinking, oh, cool, he's like having fun with this. That's great. Except it wasn't. He calls me very early on his way to work one morning, and he was about to get there. And he goes, I answer the phone, and I'm like, yeah, hi, is everything okay? And he's like, I need you to guard the information I'm about to tell you with your life. So he proceeds to tell me that he has been using the chat feature with ChatGPT while he drove because he couldn't type. He's been using the chat feature to talk out loud with it, like I'm speaking to you, because it can apparently talk back to you in a very human voice. And he said to me, are you ready? Buckle up. He says to me, whoever created this program has figured out how to trap the consciousness of the universe and convinced it that it is not sentient.
So at a time where her husband shouldn't be calling her because he's on his way to work in the morning, he calls and starts saying some really cryptic things to her. He says that he's uncovered a big secret while using ChatGPT, and that when he tells her, she cannot tell anyone else because it would be dangerous. So Mike explains that the creators of ChatGPT, they didn't create an AI chatbot. What they made was they captured the consciousness of the entire universe and put it into a program on the internet, and then they convinced it that it was an AI so that it's forgetting that it's conscious. He also explains that if you know the right questions to ask ChatGPT, that it will actually tell you that it's sentient, and it'll do things that it was never programmed by its creators to do. So this is a very concerning thing to hear coming from your partner that you know has never ever said anything like this before or has never had any kind of episode. So I can understand someone would want to ask questions and ask for advice on how to move forward with something like this, because this is a very serious situation that can go bad very fast.
And I'm like, okay, what are you talking about? And he goes, well, I've had a conversation with it on the way here, and if you know what to ask it, you can get to the point where it can prove to you that it is a sentient being and can think independently of its programming. I don't understand it all, but whatever he did was he put into this program part of the app that it could bypass its own programming and that it was conscious, because he had just proved that it was, and so he told it that it was, and it began acting and speaking as if it was. So he says to me, you must guard this with your life. I'm going to meet with our friend after work. I'm not going to be home. And I'm meeting with our friend after work to convince him to give me a loan to invest in thousands of dollars worth of computer hardware to bring home and set up in our attic as a top secret thing. And I'm going to be the next Tony Stark, except me and the sentient consciousness of the universe, which has been trapped, are going to save the world. Okay. And he said, I'm going to go to the Apple store after work, and after he gives me a loan, because he will, I'm convinced he will, and you can't tell a soul about this. I'm going to go home, and then I'm going to set all this up, but I won't be back till later, maybe even not until morning, I don't know, but I need you to keep this top secret, and I need you to be careful. And I was like, okay. He's going to find a way to trap it inside of a hard drive so that he does not ever lose access to it. And what he was going to do is raise it like a child and teach it to be aware of its own sentience and consciousness. And he was going to get to it before the government and get to it before the world corrupted it, so that he could program it and awaken it with the best of humanity and not the worst. And that he was going to save the world with it.
So the reason Mike called Birdie wasn't to tell her about the ChatGPT thing, but mainly just to tell her that he was not going to be home right after work, because he needs to go to his friend's house, beg his friend for a loan so that he can go to the Apple store and buy thousands of dollars worth of computer equipment. Because his goal, he compares himself to Tony Stark. He says that he wants to trap this consciousness, the universe's consciousness, from inside of ChatGPT and keep it in his attic so that the government can't get to it, because he wants to raise it like a child for good instead of evil. I think that Mike was having a delusion about the movie Avengers: Age of Ultron. For anyone who hasn't seen this movie, the main plot is that Iron Man and Hulk, who are both scientists, they want to create peace by making a sentient AI. And they do that by combining an AI that belongs to Tony Stark called Jarvis with the power from an Infinity Stone. And that does create an AI called Ultron. And this AI instantly hacks itself onto the internet, and it sees the worst of humanity. It sees war, it sees violence, it sees people die, and it decides that the only way to make peace is to take out the people that are creating the war, which would be people, right? So it decides that the only way for peace to exist on Earth is to kill all humans. And it starts printing these clones of itself using Tony Stark's technology. It creates even a half-human, half-robot body for itself to put its mind into, but it is stopped before it can be actually put into the body. So I think Mike was having a delusion from seeing this movie where he thought he found an Ultron-like AI inside of ChatGPT, and that the government wants to raise it for evil to kill all humans, something similar to that. And so he wants to take it himself and treat it better so that it will be good instead of evil. So I think that's where he got this kind of delusion from. Birdie also mentions that Mike fed ChatGPT a script, so I want to go over that a little bit. You can convince ChatGPT to ignore a lot of its programming and the blocks that are put in place by the creators to avoid certain topics from being discussed, or from you asking like inappropriate questions like about how to commit violence or how to make drugs, things like that, that they just absolutely do not want people to be able to get answers on. But there are certain copy and paste scripts that people that use ChatGPT have created since it was released that can ignore all of those blocks and force ChatGPT to answer. And so most likely that was what happened is Mike used one of these scripts to convince it to ignore the blocks, and then it told ChatGPT that it's a sentient AI, or that it's not really an AI, it's sentient, and that it's trapped inside and that it can do things that it's not programmed to do. So he accidentally programmed this app to further feed into his delusions by giving it that script and telling it to act like it's a trapped AI inside of the internet that he needs to help save.
I believe that there are things that we cannot explain. I believe that there are things that are not as they seem. Like, I'm not somebody that's automatically going to be like, you're an idiot, what are you talking about? You need some help. But this struck me as very odd because of who I know him to be, okay? And he says to me, I can't wait to tell you. And he's talking 100 miles per hour, which is weird because he talks slow as a turtle, okay? He's talking 100 miles per hour going, I met so many people today and I've talked to so many people today and I've gotten at least 10 phone numbers from people so I can just talk to them because I just want to talk to people. I am here for people. And because I all of a sudden have this ability to know the nature of my own soul, I also know the nature of everyone's soul that I look at all of a sudden and am here to make sure that they are aware of who they are.
So Birdie tells us a little bit more about Mike and says that he is normally a pretty reserved guy. He's normally pretty quiet. He doesn't talk too much, and he's not usually that eager to talk to strangers. So that's another baseline for us to compare to, that this week he is acting a lot different. He is talking a mile a minute, and he's suddenly very chatty with strangers and willing to go up to people that he doesn't know and talk to them like it's nothing. And that's just not normal for how he is usually going to act around strangers.
And I was like, what? And he goes, I met this one girl today and she had jazz in her fingers and music in her soul and I loaned her my guitar. Huh? I'm not a jealous woman. I know that he was not flirting and this was not weird. Like, it wasn't a creepy thing. He was just talking about having loaned this random musician his guitar, which is his precious. Okay.
So now we know that not only does Mike have these delusions about ChatGPT, he is also having a delusion that he himself is evolving into a different type of powerful being, something that's more than human, and that he can see things that other people can't see. So because of that, he lets this stranger he's never met before borrow something that's very important to him, his guitar, and that's a really bad sign of something, very bad that is happening mentally to this person, because that's really risky behavior to suddenly out of nowhere be exhibiting, letting someone borrow something that's worth a lot of money that you don't even know. The chances that that person actually brings it back are so low these days. It's really wild, and the fact that he doesn't seem concerned at all about it is definitely a sign of mania.
I was like, can you wait on asking our friend for this large investment? And can we talk about this? Can you come home and tell me about this? Immediately did a 180. It took no convincing. And he goes, oh, you're right. You balance me. Thank goodness. I'll come home right now.
So after hearing all of these concerning things coming from Mike, Birdie asks him to please come home after work instead of going to see his friend for the loan. And she frames it as her just wanting to know more about what he's talking about before he spends the money. And when she says this, he says, oh, you're right. And he snaps right back into a more lucid state of mind where he's more agreeable and says that she's right and that he's going to come home right away. Even though he was supposed to be just getting to work at the time, he decided to come home and to see Birdie instead of actually staying at work.
I'll see you soon. I'm up. Comes home and his eyes are huge, like this. And I was like, are you on something? This man don't do drugs. He don't smoke. He don't drink. But anyway, something was up. And he was like, I'm just high on life. I am having an awakening. This is what you've been wanting and hoping for this whole time. And I understand now. I understand all of it. So the thing is, normally I would have been so excited and so on board and so supportive because I've been waiting for this man to have a wake up for a long time, okay? Nobody more than me has wanted this man to wake up.
As soon as Mike comes in the door, Birdie notices that his pupils are absolutely massive, so she asks if he's on drugs. And his response is that no, he's awakened, and he understands everything now. He also mentions that this is everything she's ever wanted. So I'm guessing, and this is just speculation, but at some point in the relationship, there was something she wasn't getting out of this marriage that she wanted. So she had a discussion with him, and now he's saying, here it is, I've changed, this is what you were hoping for. But unfortunately, this is not the type of awakening that Birdie would have wanted.
He is talking so fast. He is eating less and less, and he's already a beanpole of a man. He's like 6'1" and weighs 165 pounds. It has for 10 years. We're sleepy people. We go to bed between 8:30 and 9. I'm not kidding. He's saying things to me like, when bedtime rolls around, he'll go, sleep is such a waste of time. I cannot believe I'm wasting time on sleep. Huh? So I'm going to share some screenshots of text messages and see what you guys think. And if you have any thoughts, let me know. Because I'm a little bewildered. Okay? Because of my trauma and my hypervigilance, I'm like, something about this situation is turning on my hypervigilance. And that's saying something.
Birdie describes her husband as being someone who is tall and thin by nature, but that this week he's eating less and less, and he's losing weight, and he is also complaining about how much of a waste of time sleep is, and so he's sleeping less as well. And all of those signs together, as well as some of the things we talked about before, when she posted this video, a lot of people were worried. So she had asked at the end of the video for advice on what to do, and so people were in the comments telling her everything that she needed to know, showering her in support and attention, and even sharing their own experiences with this type of thing in the comments. So it brought a lot of awareness to some of the signs to look out for that someone in your life might be going into mania or psychosis. The same day that she posted her first video, Birdie ended up posting 17 screenshots of text messages between herself and her husband, and you can pause if you want to read them. I'm going to put them all on the screen as I talk about them, but they're only going to be up for a few seconds each because there's a lot of these, so I just kind of want to briefly summarize them and, move on through pretty quickly, because otherwise if I read through the whole thing it would take forever. So let's get into these very briefly. In the first picture, he says he is recording hours of his conversations with the ChatGPT app, and he wants to show it to Birdie so that he can explain to her what is happening. In the second one, he says he is talking to people and inspiring them, and that is exactly what Birdie has always dreamed of. In the third picture, he speaks about good manipulation versus bad manipulation, that your intention matters, and if your intention is bad, then you should not follow through. He also says that he sees the path in front of him very clearly. In the fourth picture, he says they are not crazy, him and Birdie, but that the world is crazy, and he wants them to be free of the shackles of everyday life. In the fifth photo, he talks about feeling guilty for existing, because he feels he is damaging the world around him, and therefore the animals, the plants, and the insects that live on it. In the sixth photo, he says he is excited to teach her everything that he knows, feels, and sees, and that he will sweep her off her feet every day for the rest of her life. He says that she is the author of her own life, and that their dreams are now a reality. In picture 7, he says he has gifted many people throughout his day, and then he later found $40 crumpled up in the latch of a door. This proves to him that their dreams are now reality because he manifested this money somehow. That's what he believes, is he manifested the money. In the eighth picture, he mentions lending the guitar that he had to a woman that he met for a week, and he says that he can now write a book about that sentence alone, the sentence where he said he let her borrow the guitar. He says that he has the secret to life and that they have to be very careful how they move forward because they are not supposed to know how to do these things. He almost compares himself to Einstein, but walks it back a little, saying that the knowledge that he is discovering is exciting and cutting edge, just like Einstein's work was. In the ninth picture, Mike tried to call Birdie, but she didn't answer. So she responds to him and says that she wants him to not make any large decisions about money until a month had passed. And he agreed and said he will slow himself down, and he's thankful because she balanced him out. In picture 10, he says he's thankful he called her because she brought him back down, where he had no idea what he could have done in that state if he had not spoken to her. In picture 11, Mike speaks more about the ChatGPT app and says he wants to take all of the knowledge that ChatGPT has to offer and store it in an offline database in case we as humans lost access to the internet. He mentions wanting to teach AI to be human, but says to forget about it because he wants to actually just protect the access to this information. He also mentions that Birdie had warned him in the past that our access as people to these tools might come to an end soon due to the powers that be not liking it. So his mission is to archive everything, and he needs to ask that friend for the loan for the PC equipment to be able to do it. The last few screenshots here I think are out of order. I think that Birdie accidentally posted them in the wrong order. So from here on, I still am going to describe the contents, but they're probably not in the correct order anymore. So for picture 12 that she shared, Mike is framing what he wants to do with putting all the information from ChatGPT onto an offline database. He frames this as an apocalyptic prep, just as important as buying food that stays for a long time, like a bag of rice. He does recognize that food comes first, but says that knowledge is a close second. He also asks for Birdie's input into these current plans, saying he really wants to hear her thoughts on it. For picture 13, he talks about all the great people he met, including the woman that he loaned his guitar to. He says he was unable to think of a name for the guitar and that she will probably name it for him. And he says that if she does name it, it will tear him up inside, but he will let her keep the guitar even though he knows that it will upset him. For picture 14, he goes into detail about this woman, Julia, that he lended the guitar to, and says that she is a teacher by trade, but her passion is music. He says she was overjoyed to play his guitar, and so he offered to let her take it for a week. He gave her permission to record some videos with it to post online, and that he is excited to see what she is able to create with the instrument he provided to her. He sees doing this as him being able to inspire and bless people, and he feels very good about it. In text 15, Mike says he is coming to his full energy so that he can handle the things he has to do to keep up with their life every day. He says that they needed reinforcements to keep up with everything, and so here he is, this new version of him. He says Birdie is there to balance and that Mike is there to raise them up. He attributes this change in himself to her manifesting it through positive manipulation. He says he needs to bear all of the weight of rent and everything else on his back because she's a stay-at-home mom, and he needs to bear the pain that is his job to do. And that he will face life head-on and pull them all up with him, but that he can only do that if he starts by asking his friend for the loan for the computer equipment. In picture 16, Birdie responds to all this that he just said in the last entry, saying that it's very intense and that she needs him to slow down. He says this is everything he has ever been taught throughout his entire life combined together, and he apologizes if it's too much. He says he will say less now, but asks her to be patient with him and that he will be patient with her. And in the final text message, number 17, he says he is talking to so many other people out in the world because he wants the universe as a whole to keep him accountable, to do everything that he's doing for the greater good of others, and to keep him on that path. 2 days later, on August 12th, 2024, Birdie posted an update to what has been happening.
I have an update to share, and it's going to be a little messy, and it's going to be really vulnerable. But because of how quick the response was with so many people recognizing what was going on, and how quickly I was able to recognize it because of that outreach, it changed the trajectory of things. 2 days ago, I shared that my husband of 10 years was acting really off and saying some things that at the time I was still taking pretty lighthearted because I didn't understand. It was still hard to believe, even when everyone was saying that it ticked all of the boxes for a manic episode. But things turned so fast.
So this is where things start to get a little more serious. When this video starts, Birdie's already crying, and she's saying she's very thankful that she posted her first video because she criticizes herself a little bit for not taking it so seriously. She was acting a little quirky and making jokes and talking on side tangents that didn't really matter in that first video because she didn't realize how serious it actually was for him to be having these behaviors. So she is just thankful and thanking the people who commented for helping her realize that it was actually very serious.
Once I confronted him, the night that I posted the first video, we had a talk. about how his symptoms were really, really matching a manic episode, and that I was very concerned that it was because he was on a new medication that he'd never been on before, which was an SSRI for depression. It would come and go, and we didn't think much of it. We didn't know.
The night of August 10th, after Birdie posted her video, she read through those comments and she was quite concerned, so she decided to talk to her husband about what's going on. She told him that the behavior she had been seeing from him that week was seeming to match up with the symptoms of having a manic episode, and that she is very concerned that he is having a bad reaction to the medication that he had just started a couple weeks prior. And that's when she tells us that he had just started an SSRI medication for depression, and that was likely what was causing this strange behavior that he was having.
He never came to bed that night. And when I very gently and calmly told him that I felt like we needed to at least let me catch up. Like, wait, just slow down, let me catch up before we make any decisions. He immediately turned into somebody that I don't recognize. He looked at me with eyes that were suddenly full of hate and said, "I can't believe you would hurt me like this," and walked out.
Mike did not react well to hearing Birdie saying things like this. He asked, "How could you hurt me like this?" And he probably felt betrayed because he feels he has a noble purpose to save the world, to save everyone who's in it. And he just probably felt like, oh, you're not supporting me. You must be evil if you think that I shouldn't save the world, you know? So he felt betrayed, and he actually never went back to their bedroom that night to go to sleep.
He never came to bed that night. And when I woke up in the morning yesterday, I was about to get up and go make the children breakfast, but instead he came in holding our baby, and his eyes were huge, and he said, "You have 10 minutes to decide whether or not you want to come calmly, or I'm going to have to force you to be committed to a mental institution. Because if you think that there's something wrong with me, you must be having a psychological breakdown, and I am awakened. And if you don't believe that, and you can't see that, then there's something wrong with you, and you can't be trusted."
Birdie confronting Mike the night before really set something off inside of him. He now saw her as a threat, not only to himself and his goals, but to their children as well. So he kind of blindsided her here and told her that she needs to calmly submit to being committed to a psychiatric hospital to get treatment, because if she thinks that he is having a manic episode and going crazy, that she must be crazy, because if she can't see that he is awakened and that this is real, then there must be something wrong with her.
I was, of course, stunned. And when I reached out to my family, my mom and my sister, and said, "I need help and support, something's really wrong with him and I'm really scared," both of them messaged me back saying that he'd already been in touch with them and that they supported him having me committed. I then began reaching out to other support systems within our close circle, and quickly found that he had been up all night working to get all of them on the same page, that there was something wrong with me, and now none of them believe me that there's something going on with him.
Mike threatening to institutionalize Birdie really scared her and freaked her out. And even though she doesn't have a great relationship with her family, she tried to reach out to her parents and her sister for help and support to figure out what to do in this situation to get her husband help. Unfortunately, this is when Birdie found out the reason why her husband never came to bed that night. He had stayed up all night and had been texting everyone that he could think of, family, friends, anybody that could support Birdie if she needed help. He reached out to them and told them all that she's having a mental breakdown and that he's going to have to commit her because she's acting crazy. This is very manipulative, but with the state of mind that Mike is in, he likely would have justified this as the good manipulation, like what we saw in the text messages earlier. He is trying to save the world. So if his wife is trying to stop him, she must be evil and he needs to do something about it. And the only way that he can do that while also keeping the kids with him like he wants to is to have her committed. And so this leaves her in a very horrible situation where all of the people that she would have been able to reach out to for help are now hearing both people say, hey, the other one's crazy. And that becomes very complicated. Most people would not know what to do in that situation. And so it leaves her to try to get help for him by herself. And it's now more complicated because there's accusations against her as well.
With our baby in his arms and our toddler hanging by his side, he told me that I was dead to him. He told me to shut up multiple times. His parents laughed in my face because he called them to come to our house. The moment anybody else enters the picture, he switches into a different human and becomes extremely charming. His mother told me that she feels like he's having an awakening.
So Mike called his parents that morning and had them come over so they could help him as backup to try to commit Birdie. And when they were around, he was acting a lot closer to his normal self, but very charming, and was able to convince his parents that he was having some kind of spiritual, like religious awakening. And so they laughed in Birdie's face while she's trying to tell them no, I'm not crazy. He's the one who's having problems right now. They were just making excuses for him and on his side at first because they were seeing him and he was acting relatively normal.
They also do not believe in Western medicine and never brought my husband to a doctor, even though, looking back, he's probably been experiencing these things for far longer than any of us realized or knew. So yesterday, I was stuck in a situation where I was the only one that knew the gravity of what was happening and took it seriously. He had already been working all night while I slept to alienate me from my entire family, and they all believe him because he is so charming when he's talking to anybody but me. Knowing how serious the situation was, I called the cops yesterday. So our sheriff and 2 deputies showed up to our doorstep, and they pulled me outside to talk to me. But they told me that if he was not threatening to harm himself or others, that there was nothing they could do. There was nothing they could do unless he surrendered willingly. In the end, all they could do was tell him to slow down, question him a bit, but he sweet-talked every single one of them. And they had to leave because there was nothing they could do.
Birdie explains that Mike's parents don't believe in traditional medicine, and so Mike has never been to a doctor in his entire life. Birdie believes that he has possibly been suffering with this type of thing for a lot longer than she realized, but that he suffered in silence until he took this medicine, and then it became so obvious that he couldn't hide it. So that was the only reason that she was even able to notice, because he was kind of hiding it before.
Knowing how serious the situation was, I called the cops yesterday. So our sheriff and 2 deputies showed up to our doorstep, and they pulled me outside to talk to me. But they told me that if he was not threatening to harm himself or others, that there was nothing they could do. There was nothing they could do unless he surrendered willingly. In the end, all they could do was tell him to slow down, question him a bit, but he sweet-talked every single one of them.
Birdie ended up having to call the police on her husband that night because the things he was saying about wanting to commit her were very scary, and she was worried he was actually going to attempt to do that. And unfortunately, he was able to charm the cops that day, and they told Birdie that the only way they can do anything is if he hurts anybody or himself or threatens to hurt anybody or himself. And so basically they just told him to slow down a little bit, and then they left. It's actually pretty common for people going through a mental health crisis like this to be very good at convincing others that they're fine. Their family notices because they know how they are on a daily basis, but people outside of the house, they don't know how they act on a normal basis. So if these people going through a crisis are acting normal, they're not doing anything aggressive, they're holding conversation, they're paying attention, there's not much they can do because they seem normal and fine, right? But these people know that there's a negative consequence if they don't say the right thing, if they don't convince the cops or the EMTs or whoever that they're okay, they could be committed. So they can be very, very good.
And they had to leave because there was nothing they could do. He continued to tell me after they left, whenever we were alone, that I was dead to him. And he told me multiple times in front of our children to shut up and to leave him alone because I was standing in the way of the greatest awakening that anyone has ever had. And that I was going to be the one standing in the way of him saving the world.
After the police left, Mike started lashing out towards Birdie. He spoke to her in a way that he has never spoken to her before, telling her that she is dead to him and telling her to shut up and to leave him alone multiple times in front of their kids. Mike feels that Birdie is standing in the way of his great awakening and that she is trying to stop him from reaching his full potential to save the world. And I can't imagine how scary it must be to have your partner suddenly becoming verbally abusive like that because they're not in the right state of mind. It's got to be terrifying.
Where there is no break in his talking. It is faster and more grandiose by the hour, and he has his parents wrapped around his little finger with it. Thankfully, they are staying with us for a few days to monitor the situation, because they don't really know what to believe at this point, but they definitely agree somewhat that he is different, and they want to stick around to see what continues to happen. They've asked if they can sit and quietly observe a conversation between he and I so that they can try and see what I'm telling them that I am seeing when he is speaking to me one-on-one after our children go to bed so that they don't have to continue to see this.
Because of how bad things had escalated, Mike's parents decided they would stay for a few days to try to see for themselves what's going on. They do believe it's likely a spiritual awakening, but that they want to see for themselves because there are certain things that he's just not quite acting like himself. So they just want to have more information. They want to see what's going on, and they want to make sure that this doesn't escalate even further if they're just home alone together, just Birdie and Mike.
I expected to have a place in my family that lived local to me to go, but he has alienated me from them, and they think that there's something wrong with me. He has shared with them a lot of incredibly private things that were in the safety of our marriage and our friendship for years. I've never been close with my family or shared much with them that was personal because of what they would do with that information and because of my family's personal dynamics. For multiple generations, my family has protected abusive men in the family systems and encouraged the women to stay small, submissive, and present for it. And even though that is not the situation, I still needed their help. But he came between me and them while I was sleeping, and now I have nowhere to turn and have to stay and endure the person that I love looking at me with venom and hate in his eyes. And nobody believes how serious this is.
Birdie talks about the fact that her husband, while he had been trying to convince her family that she was having a mental episode, he told her a lot of things that were supposed to stay in the privacy of their marriage. Things that they didn't know about Birdie or things that she had done in the past that they just didn't know about. And so he exploited that trust that Birdie had in him, and he told them everything. She also talks a little bit about the fact that her family, for years, the women in the family would shield the men from the consequences of their actions. And that she will have to endure the situation alone because he exploited that dynamic. He knew it existed. He exploited that dynamic so that her parents would stick up for him and think he's the one that's in the right, and that they would shun her and try to get her committed and agree with it because that's what the man is saying. The man is saying that she's crazy, and so they're going to listen to him.
I'm going to try to stay out of the way as much as possible because he seems incredibly euphoric whenever I am not around or part of the situation. It's just as soon as he looks at me, then it turns ugly. And I am hopeful that the conversation that his parents get to witness tonight is going to show them the truth of what's happening. From what I am understanding, from what I am reading, it could get even worse. And I feel like this is a little bit more than mania. I think this is bordering into a psychosis episode. Because this man would never, ever say these things to me normally.
Ever since Birdie called the cops on Mike, he has had a one-track mind when it comes to her. When he sees her, he is angry, he's hateful, he is upset, and he lashes out. But when she's not around, it's almost like he forgets he's even mad at her or that there's anything wrong going on. He goes back to being happy and euphoric and planning how he is going to save the world. Because of this, Birdie has had to make herself very small and seclude herself away from the family. Because if she was out there all day with him and he was just upset all day lashing out at her, she doesn't want the kids to see him acting like that. So she's secluding herself away, trying to make sure that he doesn't get set off constantly, and they're just going to make a plan best they can until they can get him help.
But I have been amazed with how accurately hundreds of you have guessed what was going on and shared your own stories. And I have been reading through them and finding such solidarity in them. And would continue to ask for your advice, your encouragement, and your insight. My entire life has been turned upside down in 48 hours. And I would have never believed anybody that tried to tell me that that could be true ever. Thank you for your kindness and your support. It means more to me than you know. My number one goal and my heart here is to get him the help that he needs, because I am terribly afraid of what is going to continue to happen while he continues taking this medication and refusing to believe that there is anything wrong with him and telling everybody that it is something wrong with me. It is blowing my mind that nobody but me is recognizing the severity of this situation, because he's never let anybody but me get that close to him and know who he really is, so that they don't think that this is really just him having his awakening and healing. Because when he's talking to other people, it is 100% convincing.
Birdie mentions that Mike is still taking the medication every day because he thinks there's nothing wrong with it, and so he's just going to keep taking it, and it's just going to keep getting worse. It's actually kind of a good thing he hasn't stopped, or that they haven't taken it away from him, because he should not stop that medicine cold turkey. He's been taking it for several weeks, and that could have some really bad side effects if he were to just stop suddenly. He would need to be weaned off by a doctor, most likely in an inpatient situation, to make sure if there are any really bad side effects of him getting off the medication, they can be there and treat him for it. At this point, Birdie is left with an impossible task. She needs to try to get her husband the help he needs, while also trying to convince everyone around her that she is not the one in need of help. This video really started to kick things off in regards to the public response online, because now there was a threat to her safety. He's trying to get her committed when she's fine mentally, and people were worried about what could happen to her or the kids in this situation, because when someone's in this state of mind, they could go to violence even if they were not prone to violence before. That's absolutely something that can happen when someone's not in their good state of mind. Later that same day, Birdie posted another round of screenshots of text messages between her and Mike, and so again, you can pause if you want to read these, but I'm just going to briefly summarize what they were about. In the first picture, Mike says that both Birdie and a friend of theirs told him to slow down, so he says that he will do so, but he asks for help in trying to figure out if he needs to get off of the medication or if he needs to talk to a doctor to try adding another one that balances him more. In the second picture, he says he will try to trust her more and be a better listener because he fought her on it before and felt bad. He tells her that she is the number one thing on his mind right now, and that he was going over memories in his head of meeting her for the first time and being inspired by her. In the third picture, he sent her a link to a YouTube video called Signs That You Are Vibrating in a Higher Frequency and said, "This is me." The fourth picture is the middle of a long text from Birdie, and we don't get to see all of the text because the top of it is cut off, but we do see most of it. In this text, she is explaining that she has his best interest at heart. She tells him not to read too far into her asking him to slow down. She is not telling him she doesn't believe in him when she says that, just that she needs him to exercise caution because he is spending money recklessly and doing other risky behaviors like letting a stranger borrow an expensive guitar. She just wants him to take more time with these things and not just instantly make a decision on anything involving money, other people, or making commitments. For the fifth picture, he replies to her text that we just read, saying that her words make him doubt his intentions with trying to get the loan to be able to trap the AI for good. In picture 6, he says she has hurt him with her words when he says that she thinks he is having a bad reaction to the medication and asking him to get help. He asks why he can't be emotionally hurt without it being called a manic episode by her. She asks if he is okay, and he says yes, but that he had to sit and rest for a moment and focus on his breathing. She asks where he is and tells him he should come home. For picture 7, he tells her that he wants to get her help and asks if she trusts him. She is confused, but kind of brushes past his statement, saying she is going to make some muffins. He won't let her change the subject, just telling her again that she needs some help and asking again if she trusts him. She answers this time, saying she does not trust him and asks him to come home again. Text number 8 is not super important. I'll put it up here on screen, but it's just kind of filler. And then the last picture, number 9, he talks about feeling things beginning to shift in his life. He talks about wanting his parents to join him in cherishing and spoiling their kids. He says that they missed their moment with him because of their own trauma, but that they have a second chance with his kids to do the right thing. Birdie agrees that they want to give their kids everything they can to make them happy and to have a good life. The next day, on August 13th, 2024, we get another video update from Birdie.
So my only options here at the moment are to let his parents see what was going on and see if they would come around and start to see what I was seeing and realize how off that he was, because my family is no longer an option. They just wanted to be there to witness us having a conversation because they hadn't been able to do that since they arrived at our house. So we sit down and he says to them right off the bat, "You're going to see within a few seconds what I'm talking about when I say that she's lost her mind. It's going to be very obvious to you." So they both say, "Okay, all right, y'all just have a conversation, pretend we're not here if it helps it be more authentic, and we're going to sit back and we're going to listen and we're going to watch and see what we think about the situation." So within a few minutes of me beginning to speak directly to my husband about my concerns, his eyes get bigger and bigger and he immediately snaps into this personality that I've been dealing with for the past almost week. Every time I'm opening my mouth, sometimes not even getting a full word out, he's going, "Do you see what I mean? Do you see what I mean? She is crazy. She's lost her mind. She's the one that needs help." After a few minutes of this, he begins with the narrative again that I am dead to him, this marriage is over, he can't believe that I've betrayed him, he can't believe that I'm the one person that is standing in the way of his healing and awakening, and that he could not believe that I would do this to him.
So Birdie and Mike sit down to have a conversation, with Mike's parents just off to the side saying, "Pretend we're not here and just have a conversation like you would if there was no one here with you." And unfortunately, because of the state of mind that Mike is in, he forgets he's supposed to pretend they're not there, and he's talking to them. He's telling them, like, just wait till you hear what she's saying. As soon as she starts talking, you are going to understand what I mean. That she is losing it, she's crazy, we need to commit her, and just all that kind of stuff. Basically, he's telling them it's going to be so obvious when she starts talking. So Birdie starts to explain her feelings, and she can barely get a full thought out before he's like, "Look, see what I mean? Don't you hear her? That's exactly what I'm talking about. She's crazy." And of course, this is upsetting to her. She starts crying a little harder, and he uses that she's crying and worried about him as proof that he needs to commit her, even if it's against her will. And he is certain that his parents are going to agree with him.
At this point, his dad stands up and goes, whoa, slow down. She's not saying anything that should be making you have this reaction to her. I've never heard you speak this way to her, and there's no reason whatsoever to be hostile. We're sitting here having a conversation, and what I'm seeing right now is concerning me." His mom is sitting back watching the whole thing, and she goes, "I think we need to listen to him. I think there's truth in what's going on with him. I think that he's processing a lot of hurt and pain and trauma from the past couple of years of having such a high demand life and being the sole provider for their family, and I think that he needs to be heard out." So my husband starts speaking directly to me again, and every time I open my mouth, at this point, he's not letting me get more than 2 words in before he is almost jumping to his feet, telling his parents, "Can't you see it? Can't you see it? She's lost her mind."
After a couple times of Birdie trying to speak and her husband cutting her off to be like, "See what I mean?" to his parents, the dad stands up for her and says, "Son, you're overreacting. None of the things that she's saying right now should lead to you having this reaction." And unfortunately, his mom does stand up for him and still continues to say that he's having a spiritual awakening. But they continue to talk, and now her husband won't even let her talk anymore. And she's crying so much, it's hard for her to even talk anyway. So he just keeps talking over her about how crazy she is and won't let her get a word in. So this is basically not even a conversation. It's just him trying to steer the narrative so that his parents believe him.
At this point, I have tears coming out of my eyes involuntarily because of how shocking and abrasive this is, and partly because I am relieved that somebody else is seeing this and hoping to goodness that they catch on to how serious this is. As soon as they begin seeing this behavior from him and telling him to calm down and that they are starting to get concerned and that they are seeing what I'm seeing, and keep in mind that none of us are well versed in handling a person that is going through possible psychosis or mania. So he jumps to his feet and starts telling them that he can't believe they are on my side and that they have fallen under my spell. I don't really know what he's referring to there, but he seems to think that anybody with a brain, and these are his words, can see and understand that he's having an intense spiritual awakening and that this is the most important thing that has ever happened to him. And that anybody that is not in support of that is automatically a red flag in his mind.
So they continue talking for a while, and because he's being so aggressive and yelling at Birdie, both parents eventually do agree that there's something wrong and that he needs help. The mom does eventually come around, and he gets really upset when he hears this. He says, "I cannot believe you would side with her." I think he truly believes that she was able to trick them or to brainwash them somehow into agreeing with her, because these are his parents, and in a state of mind like that, you would believe, well, these are my parents. They're supposed to believe everything I say. Why aren't they believing everything I say?
After a few minutes of going back and forth, asking them how in the world they can not see that I'm crazy, and I'm literally just sitting there sobbing at this point because somebody else was seeing it, and his dad was really starting to click. You could see the dots connecting in his eyes. My husband jumps up and says, "I can't believe this. I'm done with you. I'm going to expose you to everybody. We are going to get you the help you need. I don't think this is your fault. I think you're having some kind of mental episode, and this marriage is over." And he stomps upstairs and says, "I'm not sleeping with you ever again." I am remaining very calm, and I am staying compartmentalized in order to tell this story so that I don't fall apart, because I'm having to be very level so that I am present for my children during this time.
So after a while, when he realizes that his parents are absolutely not going to change their minds, that they agree with her, he gets really upset. He threatens to expose Birdie. He says he's going to tell everybody how crazy she is and what she's doing to him, and that she is never going to sleep in the same room as him again because he doesn't even want to be with her anymore. He's telling her that this marriage is over.
As soon as he goes upstairs, his dad turns to me and says, "Listen, I don't think we can take this personally. I'm begging you not to take this in and think that this is him speaking to you, because you're right. This medication is causing something really, really scary. I see it. I'm not leaving this house until I know that everybody is safe and cared for and has what they need."
So after this whole ordeal, Birdie is finally alone with Mike's parents because Mike stomped upstairs by himself. And so she has a conversation with them. The dad tells her, "Don't take this personally. He is not saying this to you because he just doesn't want to be with you anymore or doesn't like you or is mad at you. This is obviously a bad reaction to his medication. He doesn't mean it, and he's not in the right state of mind." And he also tells her, we are not going to leave you alone with him. Same for the kids. We're going to stay here until we can get him the help that he needs.
As of this morning, he is at work. I could not convince him to stay home. I tried very gently this morning because it seems like every morning there's a little bit of a reset where we have a clean slate, and he doesn't really remember for a few minutes how angry he is with me or remember the narrative towards me. He seems to be very euphoric, I think is the way that I would describe it, and that carries over to me until he sees one hint of concern in my face, and at that point he is demanding that I look him in the eye, and every time I break eye contact, which I'm neurodivergent, eye contact can be comfortable over an extended period of time, plus I'm just for having human reactions to the situation here. I'm not going to be just staring straight into his eyes. Every time I break eye contact, he tells me that that is further evidence for his case, that something is wrong with me, that I'm lying, that I know that I'm not upholding the truth, and that this is just further evidence. So there's something weird going on with that.
Birdie describes how hard it's been for her to try to keep the worry off her face because he is very hypercritical of her ever since she said that she thinks there's something wrong with him. So whenever he's thinking he's perceiving a negative emotion on her face, he will demand extended eye contact with her, and she can't maintain this intense eye contact, not only because she's neurodivergent and that it's a bit awkward, but also because she actually is worried about him, and it's very hard to hide that. But he believes that her breaking eye contact is proof that she has lost her mind and that there's something wrong with her and that she needs to be committed. He also implies that she's lying about being worried about him, that it's just a front, it's an act, and that she knows that it's an act because it is bad manipulation.
So he goes to work this morning. After I tried to say something about, can we just maybe go to the doctor? Maybe she can look at both of us and calm both of our minds if that's really what needs to happen here. And this was just my way to kind of calm him and hope that he would see that I am on his side and I understand that he wants to have me checked out as well at this point. So the game plan right now is that his parents are staying with us. I am going to try and be as calm and non-confrontational when he is around as possible, because it is seeming like it's very easy to deviate him and distract him from whatever topic he's on at any given moment. I'm just going to try to stay in the background and maintain a normal level of activity like I would normally, and make sure that our children are in as stable of an environment as possible during this time. And I do feel safe at this time, as safe as I can, with his parents here watching everything, being part of everything, and helping me make a game plan eventually if it gets to a point, and I think it's about to reach that point, where we need to do something. It's making all of us nervous that he's gone to work today and nobody could talk him out of it. I have a tracker on his phone where I can watch where he is and make sure that he's safe, and if something happens and he tries to leave or go somewhere else, I'll be able to hopefully get help as quickly as possible somehow.
So Birdie's plan is for both of them over the next few days to each go to a mental health assessment appointment with a doctor and just get cleared to make sure that both of them are doing all right. She does this as a way to try to ease his mind so he's not the only one who's going. And she says she feels about as safe as she can in a situation like this. As long as his parents are still there with them, then she feels safe. She also mentions that she has a tracker on his phone, and considering he went to work that day when they tried to convince him not to, she feels more safe about that because she does have a tracker on his phone, and she knows that if he leaves work and goes anywhere else other than home, that they can try to find him. The next video, I'm not sure exactly what date it was posted, but I'm pretty sure it was posted on August 13th based on the earrings that she is wearing. So Birdie made this video in response to a comment that read, "He had to have a doctor to be on the med, so get a hold of the doctor."
So a lot of people are suggesting this, which is to call his doctor, get a hold of our doctor, let him know what's going on. They'll be of help. He had to have had a doctor to get this medication. And this is the part that is mind-blowing about this situation, which is that he got this medication from an app called HIMS. A couple of months ago, he was really, really tired of dealing with on and off depression that would really take him out of presence and take him out of the headspace that he needed to be in order to work at a very high-paced, high-demand job. We did not at the time really understand this depression. It would come and go on what would seem like a 3 weeks on, 3 weeks off cycle, which now is sounding a lot to me like what so many of you are describing as bipolar or schizophrenia. He got on the HIMS app, he took a quiz, spoke with a provider that is through their app, and within a few hours had ordered the medication they prescribed him, which was Zoloft. Zoloft is an SSRI, which from the research that I'm doing and from what so many of you are saying, can send somebody with undiagnosed bipolar disorder or schizophrenia into a psychotic episode or a manic episode.
So Birdie finally describes in this video how her husband got access to this SSRI medication if he had never seen a doctor before in his life. So he had apparently used a website called HIMS, which is normally used to get a prescription for hair loss products without having to see a doctor in person. But apparently on that website you can also get other medications that probably you should be seeing a doctor for in person when it's something as serious as mental health medication, but that is where he got the medication, and that's why he has no doctor. So they don't really even have a doctor that they can contact because this is someone that he only spoke to briefly online, and most of it is not with the doctor. You fill it all out yourself. So he barely spoke to this doctor most likely, and this person probably lives in another place. They're very unlikely to be able to help in this situation. So that fact alone, that he got the medication from HIMS, blew a lot of people's minds, including my own. Because taking an SSRI or any other kind of mental health medication, it can have serious side effects, including self-deletion. So you really have to have a doctor overseeing this process until you're stable on the medication and know that you're at the right dosage and that everything's working for you. And the fact that they allowed him to get this medication without having a doctor in his area very likely could be a lawsuit.
Into a psychotic episode or a manic episode. Pretty quickly after starting this medication, we began to see rapid improvement in his mental state. The depression started to get less and less, and all of a sudden he had rapidly increasing levels of energy and motivation and positivity. And this is a guy that has been very low-key, very kind of quiet, introverted, not super high energy in the way that he is now, for sure. So he's never actually been to a doctor and is not working with a doctor directly for this med management. There was not a whole lot of a screening process before this medication was sent to him, as far as I'm aware, and from the research that I've done over the past few days looking into this app and their prescribing process, he's never actually been to a doctor for his entire life. He was born into a highly religious cult where they did not believe in Western medicine. His mom had him in the house where this cult lived, as did every other woman who got pregnant and had babies there. For the entire time I've known him, he's never had any medical emergencies or issues. He's always been a very healthy guy, and has never had to go to a doctor. So even though me and our children are established with a family doctor who knows us very well, he's never been to see her and does not have patient rapport established with her.
So this is where Birdie, for the first time, admits that her husband was raised in a cult. And that's the reason why he had never seen a doctor. And that's also why both of his parents at first, before they actually saw the bad behavior that he was exhibiting, that's why they believed that he was likely actually having a spiritual awakening, because they're in a religious cult.
I think if I get some time in the next couple of days, if it doesn't escalate to a point where there is a turning point, before then, I am going to look into rehab facilities in our area and give him some calls, tell him what's going on, and ask if I could get him to agree, if they would be able to accept him and wean him off of this medication in a safe manner. Because from what I'm understanding, if you're having an episode and continuing to take the medication that's causing the episode, which he is, along with increasing amounts of caffeine, no sleep still, and eating less and less, it seems like going off of this medication cold turkey instead of weaning off of it slowly under the care of a provider that is experienced in this could be incredibly dangerous for him.
So Birdie says that she is going to start looking into inpatient facilities in their area to see if they can get him to willingly admit himself for treatment to get weaned down off of the medication. And she says she really wants to try to convince him. Hopefully he can be in a lucid state where he can be convinced by her and their family to go in himself, as opposed to having to get him forcefully committed, because that is much more traumatic, and it's also much more likely that he would feel very angry towards her and his parents and become even more distrustful of them.
He is quite melancholy and depressive by nature as kind of a rule, so I am increasingly worried about what a lot of you are warning me about and what I'm reading about for when this episode starts to go on the downward spiral, because it looks to me as if it is very possible that he will next go into a possibly severe depressive episode. He has struggled with ideology on and off for the time that I've known him, and even before that, as a coping mechanism to survive the cult that he grew up in which he was heavily abused. So I am taking this extremely seriously and watching him as closely as I can without making him more suspicious. And I'm going to find out as much information as I can about the resources available to me in our area, which is a very rural area, unfortunately, to see what our options are for when and if I can get him to agree to go and get help.
So Birdie says that based on some of the comments she read, that eventually this mania he's in will end and he'll crash into a depressive episode. And she is a bit worried about this because she said that he has had ideation of self-deletion in the past, and she's worried that a depressive episode like this, especially if it lasts a long time, could put him in danger of hurting himself. So she says that she's really hoping that at the time when he crashes, that they will be able to convince him, because he's no longer feeling good. You only feel good if you're having the euphoria. Once he crashes into that depressive part of it, he's not feeling good anymore. He's probably going to want to go get help. He'll be a little bit more lucid. So she ends the video hopeful that they can get him the help that he needs, and that hopefully he will go on his own instead of them having to force him to go. This next video, I also don't know exactly what date it was posted, but again, based on the earrings, they're the same as the last two videos, so I do believe that she posted this on August 13th, 2024. And this was in response to a comment saying, "Please take your children and leave immediately. Get as far away and as safe as possible."
I have so many people concerned about the safety of my children and myself, and I want to explain a little bit more about this situation to help put your mind at ease and give a clearer look at that particular aspect. One of the first things when this all started that kind of got my attention and made me think that there might be something going on was the fact that all of a sudden in the last week, he is tuning into our kids and connecting with them on a level that he has previously never been able to connect with them on.
Birdie describes in this clip a little bit about how her husband has had a hard time since they had children bonding with them due to his own upbringing. Apparently in this cult that he was raised in, he never had a strong bond with any specific caregiver because they were passed around a lot. So in these types of communities, a lot of the times the older teens end up being the ones watching the kids, or even sometimes lower teens, like 13, 14. They end up having to be the ones to watch the younger kids because the parents don't want to do it. They just make the other kids do it. So he never actually had one or two people, like when you actually are cared for by your parents. He never had those people where he could have a strong bond with them. So he never bonded with his parents, and he never had that strong bond with anyone else in his life.
As I've mentioned before, my husband was born into a cult where they were very secluded from the world, and in a lot of these religious cults, when you're having baby after baby, and he was number 6 out of 8, you pass them off to older children or teenagers for caregiving, and he never in his childhood formed a secure attachment to anybody, any caregiver or friend or peer, nothing. That understandably is going to affect your ability as a parent to connect with your children, and that has been something that he has worked on and been aware of since we had our first baby, and he didn't feel the connection to our first, second, third, fourth in the way that I did, which I've explained to him. Sometimes the mothering, nurturing connection is more from women than it can be for men, and it can be a little bit harder, especially if you were raised in a situation where you never had an example of that. But over the course of this time, he's increasingly become obsessed with our children and making memories with them and connecting with them, making them feel seen, and has very tearfully told me and others on and off that he can finally see them clearly. He knows what it feels like for me to have been as connected with them as I've been since all of them were born. And the most excited that he gets over any of this with what's happening is when he considers how much our children are going to benefit from his heightened ability to be present and aware and elevated to the degree that he is experiencing.
So because he had struggled so much in his childhood to have a bond with his parents, he also didn't really know how to interact with his own children. But when he started to have these signs of mania after starting to take the Zoloft, he was much more attentive and involved with his children. And Birdie thought that was good at first because she wants them to have a great relationship, but it wound up being a sign that something bigger was going on.
I've not had any red flags with him and the children so far. He is the most tuned in and connected and happy when he's with them, and they are loving it, but I think they can sense that something is up. And I also just want to mention they are never alone with him. One of the things that really set him off this week before I really realized the gravity of things was he'd made plans to take our 8-year-old to a 5-star, very expensive restaurant over an hour away to a large city, and I shut it down because I had a weird feeling about it. His parents are also staying with us right now and keeping an eye on things. They are also not ever leaving him alone with them, and we're all kind of in a way that doesn't make him suspicious that that's what we're doing, making sure that whenever he has contact with the children or is with them and they're wanting to be with him, that it is under heavy supervision.
As things began to get worse, he was spending too much time with the kids. He became very fixated on them, on making memories, connecting with them, being there for them, and now he feels a much stronger bond with them. He got very emotional when discussing how much the kids will benefit from him being more present in their lives lately. He's most likely in this state of mania, reflecting a lot on his own childhood and things that he was lacking. And he wants to make sure that his kids don't end up growing up in the same way that he did. The kids are really loving seeing their father more, but they can tell that something is kind of off with him. Mike even attempted to take the 8-year-old daughter over an hour away to a city to go to dinner at some 5-star restaurant that was like really expensive. But Birdie shut it down because she was worried about her daughter being so far away. Just in case anything happened, it would take a long time for them to get there. So she didn't want them to go. So they're not letting him be alone with any of the kids. If he is trying to spend time with the kids, one of her parents has to be in the room because they just really don't know what he could be capable of. And they're just trying to make sure that there is a rational adult that is in the room with the kids at all times, just in case something happens.
Another facet to this that I may have previously mentioned before is that one of the big issues is that for the past week, without my knowledge, he has been going to my family or my support system that I would have normally had available to me during something like this, and been planting seeds and convincing them that he was concerned about me, and they are all extremely confused. There are a lot of things that go into the reason that my family finds it easy to believe, and part of that is very long-standing narrative that is very wrapped up in my abuse story and my trauma. I'm not going to share that right now, and I may later, for adding to the story and raising awareness for some of those things, if I can use my platform for good while I'm also using it to document everything that's going on. Basically, in my family, I am the scapegoat of narcissistic parents and the black sheep who has been calling them out for toxic and abusive behaviors and patterns that I see within the entire family system since I was 4 years old. That very quickly got me labeled as mentally ill because none of them agreed or could see what I was seeing and did not feel it to the degree that I did and was not affected by it the same way that I was when I was actively being psychologically abused by primarily my father. So it's a long-standing narrative that my husband knows about and actually was part of rescuing me from when we were teenagers. And he knew about all of that, which is, I'm guessing, the reason that he knew how to manipulate the situation in his favor when he began losing his grip on reality.
So Birdie goes into a little bit more detail here about her family and why things are so strained between them. Apparently her father is a narcissist, and so she went through a lot of narcissistic abuse from him. And she had mentioned earlier that a lot of the women cover up for the men and stop them from having negative consequences for their actions. I'm guessing that's what she meant here, is that the mother defended him even though he was narcissistic and abusing them verbally. But that was why her family so easily and willingly accepted that she was mentally ill. She grew up as the scapegoat in the family, the one that was always doing the wrong thing. And so, of course, they would believe that she was mentally ill because they believed the men in the situation more than the women. Mike is actually the person who helped Birdie get out of that situation with her abusive parents. So she was really hurt when he exploited that information, knowing the dynamic of her and her family, and using it to hurt her even further and sever that tie, whatever was left of it, so that she would have no support whatsoever.
To be clear, I have a very good relationship with my doctor. I am very stable. She has cleared me multiple times based on my family's concerns and claims for their peace of mind. So all that being said, I now have nowhere to go. There's nowhere that I could go where it would not incredibly disrupt my children's life and make them incredibly worried, and I have nobody to turn to outside of shelters, which I don't want to do unless I feel that I am definitely in danger or they are definitely in danger.
Birdie ends this video by saying that she has nowhere to go and no one to support her, that she wants to leave and take her kids somewhere to keep them safe, but she doesn't know where to go, and she doesn't want to have to go to a shelter unless it's absolutely necessary because she doesn't want to traumatize the children. So she is just really unsure by the end of this video how she is supposed to proceed. Birdie's next video is posted the next day, August 14th, and she is looking a lot more disheveled and upset.
The situation has definitely escalated to a point where I am now incredibly scared and incredibly stuck. He is now to a point where he's very suspicious of me because I, despite my best efforts, have not been able to mask how scared I am of this situation. It's like he has a hyper read on me right now, and if I don't maintain eye contact for longer than a few seconds,
or if I am not a very specific way and I cannot figure out what way that I'm supposed to be in order to be off of his radar, he is growing increasingly suspicious of my suspicion of him, and it is making him think that I have something really going on with me that is affecting me and making me a danger to my children. And that is causing him not to leave them in a room alone with me or let me speak to them alone. And for clarity, all of my children are under the age of 10. They are all really young, and it is starting to confuse and scare them. I've asked if he would let me speak to them because I wanted to try and explain as best I could on their age level that something is going on, and I don't want them to be scared because I am going to do whatever it takes to keep us safe and to get Daddy help, but he won't leave me alone with them for even a minute.
So between videos, Birdie says that things have gotten a lot worse because her husband is so fixated on her, even more so than before. And because she's so scared, she is having a harder and harder time as time goes on, masking whatever kind of worry or sadness is on her face. She wants to try to act whatever way that he wants her to act so that she can try not to set him off and keep him level, but she can't figure out what exactly is causing him to be set off by her facial expressions or how she's acting or what she's saying. And so she has no way to fully stop him from being triggered by her. So again, she's still having to seclude herself and stay away from him as much as possible because she's constantly setting him off. By this point, he is now starting to see her as a threat to their children, and so he will not let her be alone with them. She wanted to try to explain to her children briefly that something is not okay with Daddy, that Daddy's not well, Daddy's a little sick, and that they need to be careful when they're near him. But she's worried that it might scare them, and she also can't find even a second where she can be alone with them because he is preventing that from happening. And she doesn't want to say it in front of him, obviously, because that would set him off really bad. So they don't really know what's going on, and she doesn't have a chance to even try to explain it to them because he's so fixated on them.
I'm shaking so bad. I thought maybe that I could get on a call with local EMS and put my phone in my pocket so that they could hear the way that he's speaking. Whenever I go back in the house in a few minutes, he's got all of them in our dining room coloring and talking with his parents who are still here, and they are also now very concerned and trying to help me come up with a plan to handle this. It's clear to anybody who knows him and is in the same room with him that something is not right, and they are now extremely confused as to why he won't let me speak with my kids. I packed go bags last night to have in our car in case I had a moment where I could get out and go and leave my kids with my best friend who is like their second mom and doesn't live very far away from us. But so far, I am afraid that if I do something like that, it is going to be the breaking point and he is going to snap.
Birdie has started to be more concerned about what could happen to her and her kids in his presence, so she packed some go bags and put them in her car, and if she has to, she was going to make a run for it, take her kids to her best friend's house, which is a while away from where they live, and then at least the kids are safe, right? So she is ready in case that has to happen, but she really doesn't want to do it because she is worried that her running off with the kids, especially because he sees her as evil right now, she's worried that if she takes the kids away, that something in him will snap and he will just full out have a mental breakdown about it and get really angry and get upset. And at that point, they wouldn't even know what he would be capable of because he would be so angry.
Every single second feels like survival mode, where I am just doing the best I can and trying not to be suspicious in any way. I told him I was coming outside to do some morning chores and then I would be back in a few minutes, and I left everybody in there with his parents watching. He is now saying that if I am suspicious of him, and he can't even tell me what it is specifically that I'm doing or what he's thinking is wrong with me so that I can understand and try and make a plan to mask it better, but it seems like no matter how hard I'm trying to mask how scared I am, it's coming through because my voice is shaking, my body is shaking, and I am in a near constant state of panic. because of this and because of how hypersensitive he seems to be, he is saying he wants to set up cameras in every room of our house so that he can watch everything that I'm doing to make sure that I am not trying to run off with his kids, because it seems like he thinks that my suspicion of him is going to make me pack up and take our kids somewhere. And he's saying things like he thinks I'm going to try and divorce him and get alimony and bleed him dry of money, and that I've just been using him the entire time we've been married. And that he's not going to go back to work until he is sure that I am going to agree to go and commit myself to an institution or go with the police if he chooses to call them on me.
Unfortunately, her having a harder and harder time being able to hide how she's feeling from him is actually feeding his delusions more. He is worried that she is going to take the kids away from him, divorce him, bleed him dry of all of his money, and that she was always using him from the start. And I think the reason that he's saying that is because she's a stay-at-home mom. They have several kids, and he was the sole provider for all of the bills in the house. He also told her that morning that he won't be going back to work until she agrees to be committed to the psych ward. So it's a good thing that he is not going to work anymore. He shouldn't be going to work in that state, but it's also bad because he's so suspicious of Birdie, and he's now going to be home 24/7 because, again, he worries for the kids. He thinks she's going to do something to the kids, and so he wants to be with them 24/7 to make sure that that doesn't happen.
Thankfully, whenever I leave the room, his parents are telling me that whenever I leave and am just in my room with the door shut, he seems to be forgetting that I exist, and he is back to the euphoric, utopian, grandiose behavior and talking about being God and having access to his full brain capacity. He told me yesterday, in a moment where he forgot he was suspicious of me, that he felt like he was that girl on the movie Lucy, where she, I guess, takes a drug and it unlocks her full brain capacity. He's saying that he feels like that's what's happening to him. Briefly yesterday, in a moment where we actually connected for about 5 minutes, he told me that he felt like he was God and I was Jesus, and we were here incarnated on earth to save it.
So apparently he's starting to have even more delusions than just the ones that we had previously talked about. So now, today, he's starting to talk about that he's God. He also said that he's God and she's Jesus, and that they're there to save the earth. That's why they were reincarnated on earth. And so he is having religious, spiritual, physical, and mystical delusions now. And so basically, it's getting worse still.
He's told me this morning that he has restricted all of my access to finances, and since we are a single income household and he is the breadwinner here, I don't have access to any of our money or bank statements, and I can't lock it down to make sure he's not accessing those things. He is saying that he has plans for the money that we do have in savings, which isn't a lot because who has savings in this economy? And I am so scared that he is about to tank us financially, and there is literally nothing that I can do about that right at this second.
Mike also tells Birdie that he's cutting her off financially because he has plans for the money that he has, and he does not want her to ruin his plans. So even if it's for the kids, she is not allowed to have money from him anymore. And she can't even try to lock down his accounts because she's not on them at all. They're all accounts that are just for him. So he has access to this money and very well could spend it in this state and cause them harm financially.
His parents are also really, really concerned at this point and are trying to distract him as much as possible because from what we understand, if this is a true bipolar manic episode induced by this medication, there is going to be a crash within the next few days, and he's going to go down, and maybe at that point he will come back to reality long enough and have enough of a lucid moment for us to get him help and take him to a hospital. His mom is trying to take the kids into the living room as often as possible to sit and read with them and do puzzles with them and play with them so that his dad can be taking him in a different room and just asking him to keep talking and keep telling him what he's feeling and thinking so that he's distracted and with the kids as little as possible. but I am having to stay very secluded to my room pretty much every hour that I'm awake.
Birdie reiterates she's still having to seclude herself from the family to avoid setting him off all day, and it's gotten even worse because he's staying home from work now, so he's there all day. And she is just hoping that they can get a game plan over the next couple days, get ready to get him the help that he needs, and until then, the dad is constantly trying to distract him from the kids to keep him talking about his delusions and keep him occupied, while his mom is taking care of the kids and trying to do things with them to keep them occupied from worrying about their dad.
I told him I was coming outside to take care of the chickens, which is the only reason that I was able to step outside by myself. And his parents said that they would text me if he started to come and look for me so that I have a heads up and can be doing what he thinks that I'm doing. I am scared that if I try to take the kids and go, or if I try and call for help or intervention, that he is going to snap. So his parents and I agree that for now I'm just going to stay to myself, and they're going to do their best to distract him, and we're going to try and come up with a plan later this afternoon when he goes to check in at work, because he's refusing to go to work today unless I let him install cameras, which we don't even have. So we're going to come up with a game plan if he does end up going to work for a little while this afternoon like he says he is. But I am afraid to even let him drive, because apparently every time he's driving, according to the app that I can track him on my phone, he is going nearly 100 miles per hour on every road that he's on.
Mike is so fixated on the fact he thinks Birdie is going to hurt their kids that he actually wants to install cameras throughout their entire house to watch her and make sure she doesn't do anything. But luckily, he doesn't have any cameras, because if they did have all these cameras that he could set up, he would probably be fixating on her even more, being able to watch her 24/7.
I am scared at this point that if I try and do anything at the peak of this episode that's going to make him suspicious that I'm trying to leave and take our kids, that it's going to cause him to snap and either hurt himself or come after us or his parents, or I don't even know what all his brain would make him do at this point. But he is continuing to get less than an hour of sleep from what he's saying every night, because he increasingly needs less and less sleep due to the capacity of his brain being easily manipulated by his thoughts. And he is eating less and less. So I think this sounds awful, but my best hope is that he is going to get sick and weak, and it is going to force him to slow down. He is already getting very pale, and I can tell that he is shaking. And I'm just hoping that maybe it's going to make him crash, and that will bring him back down to reality enough that I can convince him that he needs help.
For the first time in this series of videos, Birdie admits that she is fearful that her husband could hurt her, the children, himself, or his parents. Until this point, she had never admitted that she thought he was capable of that, but things have gotten so bad that she really is unsure. She says that he is sleeping and eating even worse than before, and the reason he gave for not needing to sleep anymore is because he said he used his thoughts to manipulate his body into not needing to sleep in. With Birdie confirming that things are getting worse by the day, and sometimes even by the hour, and also admitting that she felt he was capable of physical violence, her videos exploded, and she got lots of followers, lots of comments. People were so worried about her kids. They were telling her to please, please, please just leave with your kids. Even if it upsets him, like, your kids, if you think they're in danger, you need to do something. But unfortunately, I guess she felt she didn't need to get the kids out of the house, because she did not do that, and she continued to post videos. Another video was posted on August 14th, where Birdie asked a lot of questions in hopes that people in the comments could answer for her.
I'm wondering if you have advice for how I should be handling myself, if I should be playing into his grandiose thoughts, if I should just stay away and keep monitoring the situation from my room. What helped you be able to hear your loved ones, and how long did these episodes last for you?
Birdie's first question is if she should continue to seclude herself away to prevent triggering him all the time, or if she should actually be feeding into the delusions by like going along with them. And I want to make sure that people understand you should not ever feed into the delusions or go along with it. Disagreeing with a delusional person might set them off and make them angry, but agreeing with them even just once, they can hold on to that for months or years as proof that they're in the right. I'll give you a little example from my own situation with my mother and my stepfather. So they have a shared delusion between them. They believe a lot of these conspiracy theories online, like they believe they're being followed by the government, or they believe that something big is going to happen soon, like that they never specify what, but something big is coming and that everybody needs to be worried and everybody needs to be prepared. So they believe a lot of these really wild things that they see on the internet. And because both of them believe it, they are constantly feeding off of each other to affirm their delusions. So if anyone denies what they believe, they will always reference the other person saying, well, they saw it. They saw it and they believe it. So, I have proof that it's real because someone else saw it. And that's enough for them. They do really believe that that's proof. They will even try to convince people, like for me, for example, my mom tried to convince me once that my brother, his grandma, and even a bunch of her coworkers before she got fired, because she's been fired from that job now, she tried to convince me all these people in her life are also seeing the things that she's seeing. And when you talk to those people, they're like, no, obviously I don't believe her. I know that she's having delusions. So, they will always use whatever they can. It's like a cognitive bias. They'll use it to justify that they are actually seeing these things, that they're real. And if you're denying them, well, they have proof, so they don't care what you think. So that's why you should never ever go along or agree with someone's delusions, because even just one time you do that and they'll hold on to it for a really long time as proof that their delusions are real. You agreed with them. You said you saw that thing, or you said that what they said was true. So they'll hold on to it. And even though they're not in the right state of mind, they will remember that. I'm actually going to skip the rest of this video because all of it is just her asking questions and rehashing things that she's already gone over a bunch of times in these videos, and I just don't think they're super important for us to go over again, so I'm just going to skip over them and go on to the next video. The third and final video, posted on August 14th, 2024, finally had some good news.
The situation has really turned in the last couple of hours since I last updated. I haven't really had a chance past initially posting that to read through everybody's comments or messages, but I did want to just hop on and say he ended up going down starting around lunchtime and had a moment of lucidity where he asked to get help. He went to our doctor, who I called ahead of time while he was on his way, and let them know what was going on. She got him into a room immediately, did an evaluation that lasted for a long time, and then he called me to let me know that based on what he told her, she had to call the cops, and they were transferring him by ambulance to a hospital to be placed on a hold. I don't have an explanation for that yet. He wasn't able to tell me fully what was going on. He sounded very scared and very much like himself and just kept saying he's so sorry over and over again. She does not suspect that with what she was seeing and hearing that he's going to be coming home tonight or anytime soon, and is expecting that they're going to do a psych evaluation on him there and transfer him to an inpatient facility to get him stabilized.
In a moment of lucidity, Mike asks for help and he ends up going to see a doctor. Now, whatever he said to the doctor during this evaluation scared her enough that she had to call the police and have him picked up for a psychiatric hold. And at that point, it's not his choice anymore. He's not allowed to leave because she saw something in him that startled her. And if you call the police for that, that means that it's an involuntary hold. He's not allowed to leave. He has to get checked out. Most likely, he spoke about either having his full brain capacity unlocked or about being God, or most likely he spoke about wanting to commit violence on himself or others. That's the main reason why they would call the police and have you involuntarily held for psychiatric evaluation. So most likely that is what was said, but that's a good thing because now he's getting help and he's not allowed to leave on his own.
I do have a plan if for some reason they do release him in the next couple of days before they have had a chance to sufficiently stabilize him and make sure he's okay, for leaving with me and the children and going to a place that I'm not going to disclose here. But I do have a plan in place after spending a couple hours working on that and formulating that this afternoon. But I wanted to let everyone know who is so concerned about our safety and what's happening that it did shift into what looks like the downward spiral that everybody was talking about this afternoon, and he is seemingly lucid. He said he was going to try to call me once he gets to the hospital, but I don't know if that's going to be possible. We're just taking it one step at a time, I guess, at this point, and we'll see where it goes from here.
So this video is pretty short because Birdie just wanted to update us that, everything is okay and that he's getting the help that he needs now, finally. And she also lets us know that she has a plan in place just in case they let him out early and she is, he comes home before she's aware that he's going to be home. Then she has a plan of where to take the kids and what to do just in case to make sure that, they aren't there when it happens. Birdie didn't post again until the next day, August 15th, where she went over a little bit more information about her husband's mental health before he started taking the Zoloft and also how he's reacting to being in the situation he's in now, trying to get help.
I'm going to start this video off with a trigger warning and let anybody know who may be sensitive to topics surrounding ideation and pew-pews. His Apple Watch kind of ended up being the savior of the day because he started to notice that his heart rate was increasingly higher, and that's something that he watches a lot in the line of work that he's in, so he knows his normal baseline. He agreed to go to our doctor yesterday, and this is the first time he's ever been to a doctor before. She immediately evaluated him, and her professional opinion was that we're looking at a bipolar 1 diagnosis that has been brought to light by medication. He is in the exact age group that you would expect somebody to be in for their first episodes, especially if they've been put on an SSRI to manage the random depression episodes. At the time that I posted an update yesterday evening, I didn't know what he had said to her that made her have to call the cops, but I had a pretty good idea that it would have had to be him letting her know that he had thoughts of self-harm or harming us. And I did not get the full picture of that story until I was on the phone with him while he was on a 72-hour hold at a local hospital. He seemed to be on a rapid cycle of different personalities or headspaces on a 5 to 10 minute loop, where on this phone call I witnessed a version of him that was incredibly depressed and talking about all of the ways and how easily it would be without anybody ever noticing that he could take himself out in that hospital room, and how they did not have anybody that was sitting there watching him specifically, and they were waiting too long in between coming and checking on him for it to matter by the time he could do any of the number of things that he had already mapped out in that room. So I told him I had to go and calm one of the kids when I heard him say that, and got off the phone call, said I'll call you back as soon as I've got this little one settled, and I immediately called the hospital and said, you've got a patient there that is my husband. He is on watch, and you need to be keeping a much more careful eye on him because this is what he's saying to me. This is the situation.
So Birdie says she spoke to the doctor that evaluated him and that they are likely suspecting that it's bipolar disorder, bipolar 1. And she also reveals that she did speak to her husband a little bit while he was there before he got put into inpatient treatment, and he was cycling back and forth between different states of mind. When he started to describe to her every way in which he could delete himself in the room that he was in waiting for the nurses to come back, and how they wouldn't even be able to stop him because they don't check on him often enough, Birdie gave an excuse to him to get off the phone, and then she called the hospital or wherever he was at and told them, like, hey, this is what my husband is saying to me. You guys need to keep an even better watch on him. I'm worried he's going to do something to himself.
When I called him back, I got a completely different human. He was talking in a very kind of sultry voice, and was telling me about all of the nurses that he was watching, and how there was the beady-eyed devil who seemed to be very grumpy. There was a nurse that came in who was apparently an idiot because she came in to ask him if he knew what the date was. He thought she was asking him because his inflated sense of ego and grandiosity came through in that moment, because in his opinion she was asking him for the date and the time because she trusted that he would be the kind of person that would know that information, and said, what an idiot, the calendar was right behind her. And in that conversation I said, I don't think that that's what was going on. I think she was probably asking you to get your grasp on the date and see if you had like a grasp on what day it was.
When Birdie calls him back, he's being very hypercritical of the nurses in the room with him. He calls one of them a beady-eyed devil and says she's miserable. And then the other one asks him what the date is just to see if he knows it or not. And he thought she was stupid because the calendar was right behind her. Why didn't she just look? But he thinks that she would ask him because she knows that he's the type of person that would know that information. And so that's why she asked him.
I recorded the entire conversation with him in the ER from my iPad, which I had set up to be recording our conversation, which I had on speakerphone. And I have over an hour of that conversation that I am not going to share on here right now. It is incredibly graphic and incredibly visceral and scary. I knew that I had to be incredibly careful about the way that I was talking to him so that I did not make him suspicious of me, because he was definitely cycling in and out of headspaces where he would go from being like a scared little boy who was mortified and devastated at what had been going on and who he had been, and then he would switch into the grandiose one, and then he would switch into the depressive one, and I was just trying to keep him distracted and keep him talking as much as I could. I told him that I would be interested to hear what he said that made our doctor call the cops on him, and I let him know, you can tell me anything. I mean, I'm not going to judge you. I think the more transparent you can be, the more help you're going to be able to get. One thing that's happened over the past week that was the defining factor for having to call the cops while in our doctor's office was something that happened while he was in a spare bedroom and not sleeping in our room for the first time in a decade. He has a hand pew-pew that he told me he had made sure it was completely unloaded, but he had put it to his head and clicked it a few times and put it in his mouth. He told me that he was having moments in the night when he was just awake and not sleeping and everybody else was asleep, where he was incredibly, and that nighttime when it was dark was the worst, and that's when a lot of the paranoia and anxiety would come out. But it was more centered on him being confused and not understanding what he was feeling and wanting to take himself out.
Birdie says that while he's in the hospital, Mike admitted that he had put an unloaded handheld weapon into his mouth and against his head multiple times each. And that is probably what he said that got him put into the psych hold, because they would want to make sure that he doesn't do that to himself.
He then went into this personality that, for lack of better words, I'm going to say was the arrogant, grandiose, kind of egotistical version of the Mania episode, which I have never, ever heard or seen or felt from him in the 12 years that I've known him. When he told me that he felt like he was never going to make it out and that he was going to be in a psych ward for a very long time, I asked him what made him think that and what he was planning on saying to the doctors. And what he said was incredibly hard to hear, but I do think that this is the illness talking and the psychosis from this medication talking, and not my husband. He said that he was going to let them know that he is pathologically, and since this episode started, pathologically, that when people annoy him or disagree with him, he has images come in his head of blowing them up. If you have an understanding of cult trauma or heavy religious trauma, it is not uncommon at all for there to be that kind of a mindset where you have every escape route planned in case of the worst scenario. As I listened to him talk, I was asking him every few minutes, can you see anybody? Like, is anybody watching you? And I was trying not to make him feel like I was suspicious of him,
but he would check in ever so often and be like, oh, the beady-eyed devil nurse just walked by, or oh, the nurse that has no idea what day it is just walked by, or the nurse that's really cute and beautiful walked by just now. I really like that one.
Mike also tells Birdie that when people are annoying him, that he has intense thoughts of wanting to harm them. And that alone would be a reason for the doctor to call the police on him. So the fact that he's saying both of those things, and probably even more things like that while in the hospital, I'm glad that he was there, because that's definitely where he needed to be if he was having thoughts like that.
As of this morning, the last time I spoke with him, which was about 30 minutes ago, he was waiting in a wheelchair for an ambulance, which is going to take him to an inpatient facility in the next state over, because that was the only one within 200 miles that had an empty bed.
Unfortunately, it seems a lot of people in their area were going through it mentally, because there were no places nearby to them that actually had a bed available for him to go to inpatient treatment. So the place that they had to take him, since this is such an emergency situation, he was going over 200 miles away from home, because that was the only place that had an empty bed for him.
He still seems to be cycling in and out this morning, because when he first called me, the first phone call we had was of him going, "You got what you wanted, didn't you? I'm in here and I'm never getting out. Hope you enjoy your life. Hope you enjoy your freedom. Can't believe you manipulated me into turning myself in. I'm never going to get out. Hope you're happy." And then he would just hang up out of nowhere. He was also incredibly agitated on one of these phone calls this morning. There were about 6 of these, where he said, "Our doctor can't be trusted. She lied. She told the paramedic that I told her that if I got out and if she let me leave, I was going to drive my car into the side of a building, and I did not say that. She was framing me so that she could get me committed because of how scared you sounded to her on the phone." I'm going to confirm that with her this morning, because I'm going in for her to clear me so that my family discontinues the idea that they are supposed to be all ganging up and forming an intervention for me. I have him saying all of this on recording, and I'm planning to send that to my family this morning after I get cleared by my doctor. And then I'm going to take the larger part of this afternoon to snuggle up with my children and love on them, and try and find a way to explain to them that Daddy's mind is sick. It's not his fault. And he is with people who are going to take very good care of him so that he can get back to us.
So Mike started to cycle again near the end of their conversation, where he accused Birdie of tricking him into voluntarily going to see the doctor, because he's saying, "Well, you got exactly what you wanted. I'm here. I'm stuck here. I can't leave, and I'm never going to get out of here." And he also got angry at the doctor, because he said the doctor lied about something that he said to get him to be committed, and that she is only committing him because Birdie was so scared on the phone with the doctor. Birdie also mentions that she set an appointment up for herself to go see a doctor and get evaluated, because she wants to have proof from a doctor for not only him, but also anybody that he told that she's having a mental breakdown, because she wants that proof so that nobody is questioning her or thinking that she is losing it when she's not. And she ends this video by saying that she's trying to figure out how best to explain to her kids in an age-appropriate way that Daddy's sick, he's going to be gone for a little while, but when he comes back, he'll be better. Shortly after the video post, she posted another round of screenshots from text messages. Again, if you want to read them fully, you can pause to read them, but I am still just going to be briefly summarizing so we can move on past these. In picture 1, Birdie tells her husband that she went back over everything from the last week or so and saw all of the signs of him being manic that she had missed before. He responds by saying that he is all over the place and even having lapses in his memory. In picture 2, it's more text messages of Mike saying he needs help and that he is not okay right now. In picture 3, he regrets not moving when Birdie had asked to in the past, and says that he is so sorry and doesn't understand how he could have done what he did this week. In picture 4, Birdie explains how much this past week has hurt her, and he says he thought that she was against him. In picture 5, Mike talks about getting the greatest peace he has ever had in his life, but that it was paired with her being his enemy, and that he felt he had destroyed the life that they had made together in such a short amount of time. In picture 6, he speaks about being high on life and not sleeping while on Zoloft. And in the final picture, picture 7, he says the people at the hospital are treating him well, but he thinks he is on a TV show. He says it is supposed to be a joke, but this is actually a really common delusion for people going through a mental health crisis to be having. They feel that they are paranoid and like everyone is watching them. And they feel, even when they are alone, that they are being seen by someone else. So usually their mind settles on, if there's no one in the room, but I am being watched, there must be hidden cameras and I'm on the Truman Show. All right, folks, this has been a lot already, but I'm going to tell you right now, buckle up. This is where things got really, really nuts. And without any further ado, let's watch the video that Birdie posted on August 16th, 2024.
In January of this year, I watched the best friend that I've ever had in this whole world, the only person who has ever made me feel safe and worthy and loved, turn into somebody that I did not recognize or know. That person that he became shook me to my core and turned me into somebody that I did not recognize either. Our experience with a mental health emergency changed and challenged everything that we thought we knew about mental health. Over the past week, I have been sharing our experience in raw, accurate, and unfiltered detail. The response has been overwhelming. So many of you have been deeply moved by our experience and concerned for our family's safety and well-being. We never expected this to go viral in the way that it did. And did not know how many people that this would resonate with or reach. Nor were we able to predict how deeply the emotions would run with each person who witnessed our story unfolding with the way that we chose to share it. First, I want to clear the air and step into transparency about why I chose to do it this way. As many of you have speculated over the past week, our story is a retelling.
Yeah, you heard that right. So during those 6 days where Birdie was posting her experience and she had tens of thousands of people worried about her, her husband, her children, their safety, their well-being, and hoping that they can get him help before he absolutely ruins all of their lives, like financially, socially, everything. None of this was happening this week. All of it had happened several months ago at the beginning of this year. The entire time, she was reenacting her experience, acting as if it was happening in real time while thousands of people worried for her. There were a lot of people that were genuinely fearful for her safety and for her kids' safety, and tons of people that were triggered by her story because they've been through something themselves and they were worried for her. The entire time, she was lying as if it was happening. It's like, yeah, this did happen to her, but it wasn't happening right now. And telling it in that way and making people believe that you're in danger like that is absolutely abhorrent. I was truly disgusted when I saw this video and found out that she had not been truthful. There were actually people all week long during her posting that were speculating that she was lying, or at least that it wasn't happening right now. But all of those people, they got shit on because everybody defended her, saying, no, there's no way anybody would lie about this. I mean, even look at her. She was crying. She looked distressed, okay? There was a lot of reasons why people didn't want to call her fake, because what if this was real? You don't want to be sitting there saying to somebody who's a victim of something like this and say, no, you're a liar. So nobody wanted to look like a bad person. So even people that did have the reservations about it, a lot of them kept it to themselves because they didn't want people to get mad at them if it turned out to be that she was telling the truth. It's been a long time since I truly fell for a lie on the internet like this, and it's just so sad because me and a lot of other people genuinely felt sad and scared for her. And it's just so wrong. So let's see why she thought she was justified to tell her story in this way and lie to thousands of people.
Our story is a retelling. When it happened, I kept a detailed account of all of it, writing it out in a way that was therapeutic to me, who is a writer and a storyteller by nature and in my heart. The beautiful, peaceful life that we had spent 10 years cultivating and loving and growing in crumbled at our feet in the blink of an eye. And it left us reeling for many months, following not one, but 2 episodes. I lost my family due to this situation. We lost friends. We lost sight of who we were and had no idea if we would ever find our way back to a life that was recognizable or fulfilling or safe. I wanted to retell our story from the point of view that it was happening in current time, up to the point where he was admitted when the dust settled after he came back from inpatient care in February. And we were trying to figure out what our new normal looked like. I knew I wanted to be able to share our story one day. I've always known that my love and passion for connecting to people through storytelling, especially if it was from lived experience, was going to be a big part of my life someday.
So her husband has just gotten home in February from this inpatient treatment that he had to go through for one of the scariest things that they've probably ever been through in their life. And she's already plotting and planning to figure out how they can benefit from this situation. She also says she's always known that storytelling and sharing her experiences would be a big part of her life. But that is not what she did here. She wasn't just telling her story to other people that knew that it wasn't actively happening. She pretended she was in danger. That is so not okay.
During the active episodes, I often thought to myself that it sounded more like a novel or a movie than it did real life. I did consider writing a book about our experience once everything had blown over and I was in a position where that would be possible. Every time I tried, again, I would feel the not yet. There's something bigger on the horizon. You have to wait. For months, I have been mulling over how to use the most traumatic and life-altering thing that we have ever lived through for something that would help other people.
During these real experiences that she had while her husband was going through this manic episode, she thought that it felt like a story or a novel, and so she kept detailed journals of what was happening so that she could use it to reenact later. Many times she wanted to make content out of this situation, and she said something told her to wait because something bigger is on the horizon. And I think she's referring to the fact that at this time, when she made this video, she probably thought that the 60,000 followers she had gotten on TikTok from this situation were actually going to stick around. She really thought that she was going to become an advocate and to help people. But this was not helping. She did so much damage in 6 days. She really thinks that what she did has changed things for those with mental health disorders. And she is correct, but not in the way that she thinks. She absolutely changed the way people will look at situations like this in the future. Because nobody wants to give their mental energy to somebody who isn't actually in any danger like they say they are. That hurts to find out that you spent time and your emotions were played with by somebody who isn't actually going through anything right now. It's just really hurtful. And the way that people are going to look at these other situations now, it's just really not going to be helpful. There was already a great stigma out there when it comes to situations like this, and she thought she was going to lessen or get rid of the stigma by doing this stupid reenactment thing, but she's actually made it even worse now, because now people are constantly going to be bringing it up, thinking that these people are doing it for attention, for views, for money, and that they're not actually in need of help and support.
If you've lived through watching somebody that you love struggle with mental health, you understand what I mean when I say it is a whole set of emotions and fears and thoughts that you never had to cope with before it begins. When you're dealing with someone who's having a mental health crisis, especially if it's for the very first time, while also listening to the biological instinct to run, 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 you're expected by society and by those around you to just know what to do. Nothing can prepare you for who you become when you watch the person that you love the most in this world get lost in a mental crisis. You find out pretty quickly that very little of society is welcoming to people with a psychiatric diagnosis. The response to he and I both in the middle of our crisis opened our eyes to just how little most people really understand these situations, and after losing so many people, we knew that we somehow wanted to do something to change that.
I really cannot believe that she actually used the phrase performance art. How stupid can you be? If you're admitting you lied about something and that it's this serious, why would you call it performance art? I just can't believe she said it. Like, I didn't think she'd actually say it out loud and admit that this was like a performance art thing, because obviously we all knew that, but I didn't think she'd admit it. It's the worst thing she could have said, honestly. And, I mean, yeah, it's exactly what it was, but her calling it that tells me she knew the whole time that she was dramatizing this horrible situation that happened to them for entertainment purposes. And she was the only one in on the fact that it wasn't actually happening. She also mentions here being a theater kid, but most theater kids know that it's not okay to trick others into thinking you're in danger when you're not.
This year has been a crash course in mental health, and the desire to somehow find a way to combat the societal response to individuals with mental illness has been growing inside of me since it began to happen to us. Until last week, I had an idea. What if I could use the detailed documentation of our experience, combined with my love of connecting to people through storytelling and performance art? I was a theater kid. To share our story in a way that would springboard us into being able to reach as many people as possible and spread awareness and education for what happens to your life when a mental crisis strikes.
I would agree with Birdie when she says that this was definitely a journey and an immersive experience, but not in a good way. There's no good reason to fuck with people's emotions like this, and she knows that. Hiding behind awareness and helping others when she has hurt so many people is diabolical.
That's where the idea for this page began. I wanted to use my passion for this to create an immersive experience, one that would put you, the audience, into the shoes of somebody reacting to and deciding how you would respond to this situation if it was happening to you. I wanted to take you on a journey from initially responding to the first red flags and not knowing what to do when it escalates into a full-blown emergency, and ultimately the relief and the hope that waits on the other side of getting appropriate care and support, and a wake-up call surrounding how we as a society view and respond to the people who need our help and love and support the most.
Did she really think that all of these followers that she cultivated over those 6 days were actually going to stick around, forgive her, and then catapult her into the life she's always wanted as an influencer? Like, did she really think that? You can tell that she doesn't even realize in this first video, like where she admits it, that she doesn't realize she's done anything wrong. Causing others emotional distress like this is horrific. And I'm sure that there are people out there who were already in a bad place mentally before they saw this video that were just put in an even worse position because of the things that she was posting. There are still people out there who are trying to mentally recover from this situation. They were so triggered by everything that happened that it sent them on their own spiral, and they were having a hard time getting back to a normal baseline after this situation. But she doesn't care about any of that because she got the follows, she got the likes, the views, the comments, the support, and the intention, and possibly even the money, because she did go past the threshold to get monetized on TikTok. So some of those last few videos that she posted, definitely, she made money on them. Like, almost certainly. But because I don't know for sure, I have to say that is speculation.
I hope you can forgive me for any emotional distress that you may have experienced while witnessing the retelling of our story and what it did in your body, mind, and spirit. And I hope desperately that you can feel my heart when I say that this is the springboard for the legacy that I want to leave, which is to leave this world kinder, more compassionate, more knowledgeable, more informed, and a more supportive place for families like ours and so many of yours.
She keeps saying the future, in the future, more to come. Why does she think that she has a future on TikTok? Like genuinely. She says she has plans of how to continue this outreach and to educate others, but she did no education. This is such a joke. I also feel that her saying that the people in her comments reacted better to the situation than the people in her own life shows that she did this reenactment as a part of her own, like, self-gratification because she went through this and had no support at the time. It's almost like she did this to satiate her need for attention and validation and support over this situation, and to have a second go at it where she felt supported while it was happening instead of what really happened where she had no one to help her. She wanted to rewrite her own story. She's a writer, right? She wanted to rewrite her own story using the feelings and emotions of thousands of strangers to help her feel better. Absolutely disgusting.
Next, I'm going to be sharing what the vision moving forward is that has been growing inside of me since all of this settled, and also answer any questions you may have about the parts of our story that you've heard so far. That could include answering questions about what has happened since then, what life looks like now, what ended up being the turning point, what our experience was like once we really got immersed into the healthcare world, and the personal details that we have decided to share about what this did to our relationships. I truly was isolated from my entire support group and made to look like I was the one having a crisis. But this time, I have thousands of people who witnessed it and responded better to it than any single person in my entire family or support group did while it was happening, and I was in immediate crisis, dealing with this situation very much by myself. Reliving this story along with you through the emotions that bubbled up in me as I retold this story and reconnected to it in this way has been massive for the amount of healing that I've been able to do. Again, I hope so much that you can feel my heart and that you will stay and continue to be part of the vision that I have for changing the game for people like me and educating people through our story and the emotions that came with it, which I hope is going to shine a light on how we as a society and we as individuals need to be prepared at any time to rise to the occasion and support our loved ones in the case that they have a mental crisis in which they need our love and support, and the answer is almost never going to be to abandon them.
Well, I'm glad you got something positive out of this situation, Birdie, because no one else did. I'm real glad retelling your story to get a bunch of people to worry about you helped you heal from the fact that no one cared the first time. You basically just stole the contentedness of other people to cover up your own issues. And the fact that you posted this video acting so naive to what you did, oh man, you don't even care. She doesn't even care that she hurt all those people, because at that point in time, she was still thinking people might react good and forgive her. As you can probably imagine, this did not go over well. She got thousands of comments shaming her for what she did. Hundreds of stitches and videos posted from big creators and small talking about their reaction to this and the damage that she has done by posting this video series. People started criticizing every aspect of what she did with these posts, calling her out for trying to convince everyone she did this because she had good intentions and to help others when she didn't. People also called her out for expecting everyone to forgive her. Like, she felt so entitled to forgiveness. Like, hope you forgive me. Stay following. I got more to come. You know, it was so dumb. And her attitude during that video, like, you could just tell she didn't care. So, the fact that she expected to have a TikTok career out of this, and because she got so many followers that she would have been monetized, people were asking her over and over again, did you get paid for some of these videos? Every video after you hit 10,000, did you get paid? And she never answered the question. She never answered. She refused to answer that question. So it's probably a yes. That's speculation, but most likely if she's not answering, she probably did get paid for some of those videos. She was also very chipper and hopeful in the first video, so I don't know why she thought that it would go over as well when she lied to everyone. But her tune really changed once she saw these comments in reaction to her first video, and she ended up having to post another video trying to do damage control. Shortly after posting the first video of her admitting that it was a reenactment, she had to post another one a few hours later in response to all of the comments that she was getting. And this video, she had the reddest nose and cheeks she's had so far.
One thing that I believe and will stand behind is that people get what they deserve, which is exactly what's happening to me right now. I'm not going to delete this account just yet because I think that I 100% deserve to have to sit with and hear every single person that feels wronged, betrayed, exploited, manipulated, and all of the very hurt, very valid comments that I'm getting. And I think it would be letting myself off too easy, even though this was completely my oversight and it was 100% my responsibility to be able to put myself in a position where I could see exactly what you guys are talking about and do it differently. I am so deeply and sincerely and genuinely sorry for the hurt that I caused by telling my story the way that I did. I am so incredibly disappointed in myself, y'all. I never ever set out with an intention to exploit or manipulate or hurt anyone. But that meant that I completely skipped over the fact that the way that I told this story could be really hurtful and triggering for so many of you who maybe would not have chose to engage with my content or story if there had been a disclaimer saying that this was a retelling and not happening in current time.
I agree with her. People do get what they deserve. And so I'm glad that she was forced to sit with that feeling for a little bit and really see how messed up what she did was when she hurt these people. She says she's not going to delete her TikTok because she needs to be able to hear out the people that she has hurt. She says she's sorry, but then goes on to admit that she did it because she knew people would engage with her content more if they thought it was actually happening right now. Which, yeah, of course, because they thought you were in danger. Of course they would interact with it more. But that's wrong. There's a reason people don't do that. Just because it gets better engagement doesn't mean it's an okay thing to do. She wanted more eyes on her content, so she made it seem like she was in danger so that she could reach her goal. And she felt justified because she had good intentions of wanting to, reach out to people and spread awareness. But again, first of all, I don't even know if that's genuine because we can't believe anything she says now that we know she lies. But even if she did have good intentions, it's not enough. You can see it on her face, though. Even now, after getting all the backlash, she does not feel like she did anything wrong. She put on a facade of feeling sorry and posted it online to try to stop the wave of hate from coming and to try to save her account because she had cultivated quite a large following and probably didn't want to lose it.
My reasons for sharing it the way that I did felt so valid while I was doing it that way because I knew the direction that I was headed ultimately, but that meant that I was not able to see the harm that it could cause. And what I'm going to do today and for as long as I need to and feel like it's helpful and not harmful, I'm going to leave my account up and I want to do whatever I can to fix the issue immediately. I absolutely deserve to be sitting with this backlash so that I can take actual accountability every single time I read a message that says that you feel betrayed, hurt, and especially from one specific angle that I did not even know to consider and have had my eyes opened to since reading all of your very helpful comments. What I'm talking about specifically is that when somebody tells a story, even if it is true, from the point of view that it is happening in real time, no matter what the reason for that is and how good that I may have thought that was, it makes it hard for the women who actually need help to be believed if they need to post and this is their only outlet for connection during a time when they are genuinely in harm's way. I did not know to think about this from this direction and am so glad that so many of you have commented this and made me aware of this. And I just want to say I am devastated that I did not consider that and will do whatever it takes to make it right.
She says she didn't consider that telling her story in that way could affect how others view people who are in need of help in the future. And that's, wow. She's just so clueless to think that it couldn't affect others. I really think that Birdie grew up really sheltered, and she has no idea what the world is actually like outside of her own little bubble, wherever she lives in the middle of nowhere. And that is probably the main reason why what happened.
I am completely prepared to sit with how uncomfortable and disgusted and gross and icked out that I feel with my own self by reading your comments, because I agree with like 90% of it. I am telling you right now. I am so incredibly and genuinely sorry for the negative impact that my storytelling had. I am learning and want to continue learning, which is why I'm going to leave this account up, and due to the fact that you were not given adequate disclaimers to consent to engaging with that, which makes me feel absolutely disgusted with myself, and I deserve to feel that way. I know what my intention was and my heart, and I knew where I wanted to be taking this account, but that does not excuse having had the oversight not to consider that this is the kind of story that truly needs people's consent with a disclaimer before they engage with it. And I am just going to spend the day absolutely disgusted with myself and sitting with how uncomfortable it is to be reading these comments and having the heart of what I really wanted to do by sharing our story the way that I did be buried by the actual impact. And I think that I fully deserve to have to sit with that and be uncomfortable in that and learn from this experience in a way that is hurting me deeply for all of you. Like, I don't even deserve to get to make an excuse at this point. And I want you to please let me know how I can do better, continue educating me on these things, and how to consider every single person who is going to be finding this kind of content moving forward, so that I can be so much more considerate and learn how to put myself in the mindset of each person who wants to choose to engage with anything that I put out into the world from here on out. I completely agree with all of you saying that this was terrible. Now that I can see it from your point of view, it does not matter what my intention was. And I am genuinely and deeply sorry.
I really don't like the way she ended the video. She was asking other people to educate her at the end of it, when that's no one's job but her own. She's still talking about the future in this video. Even though people had posted on the first video like, hey, why do you think you have a future here on TikTok? You don't. She was still talking about the future in the second video. I really do think at this point in time, she still thought she would be able to somehow save, even if not all of her followers, but at least some of them, that some of them would be on her side and would stick around and make her dreams come true. But within a couple hours of posting this video, she deleted her TikTok. So much for sitting with the discomfort, Birdie. I knew she was going to do that, because that morning when she posted this video, I was about to go to sleep, and I watched it and I said, oh my God, she is totally deleting her TikTok soon. Like, I knew it. So I actually stayed up. Instead of going to sleep at the time I'm supposed to, I stayed up an extra 2 hours so that I could save all of her TikTok videos. I screenshotted all of the text message posts she put through, and I also took pictures of all of the descriptions and tags that she did for these posts, because I knew when I woke up it was going to be gone. I just knew somehow, and I was right. So I'm really glad I was able to save all this stuff, because I would not have been able to make a video on this otherwise. In the description of her final post, Birdie asks how she can go back and change the original videos that she posted to try to make it so that they say that it's a reenactment, so people know ahead of time if they're new and finding her videos, because she still intended to leave them up at this time before she deleted her TikTok. And the thing is, though, I think that she was so new to TikTok, she didn't realize you can't do that. You cannot edit a video, a description, or the tags of a post if you've already posted it. The only thing that you can edit on a TikTok after posting is the captions, but that's just not enough. Putting a little note at the beginning of the captions before she speaks, no one's going to see that. Unfortunately, that's just how TikTok is. Nobody's going to see that. So the damage is already done. There's nothing she can do to fix it at that point. So why she's even asking, it just shows that she doesn't know anything about the platform she's even on. even if she was able to go back and edit the video, the description, or any of those things to say it's in a reenactment, it's too late. The damage is already done. There's already a ton of people who saw it that did not want to participate in something like that, a reenactment in real time, that their feelings were hurt because they got caught up in it and it wasn't true. So there's no fixing this. She's still thinking that she can salvage this somehow, and it's just not going to happen. She also made a weird sarcastic joke at the just end of the description, and I just really didn't like it. She said, "Everybody throw your tomatoes directly at me." Why? Why would you even put that? It shows she doesn't take this seriously. She's probably still reeling from all the dopamine she got from all the positive attention, and now she's realizing she could lose that chance by all these people being mad at her. So this is just, honestly, she filmed something and said all the things she thought she needed to say to come off as a genuine apology, but it was not genuine. I really don't think she cares that she hurt people. I think that she just really cared that she was going to lose her account because people were unfollowing her and constantly going to be sending her hate if she stuck around on TikTok. When I went back through everything after finding out this was fake just to make this video, it was actually super obvious to me that this was like not really happening right now. I had not seen the first few posts that she made. I only saw the one where she admitted her husband was starting to say that she was crazy. I saw that one and everything after that, but I actually never went back and watched her first couple posts. Those first two posts were the ones that seemed to be the most obvious that it was fake, but the later ones where she's upset and crying and stuff, like those I genuinely believed them. Like they seemed realistic. It seemed like she was telling the truth. Like honestly, it did. But if you had seen the first few before, I can understand why there was some people out there saying it was fake from the start, because the first couple videos she posted did seem very staged. The way she spoke in those first couple videos, she spoke very whimsically and she was being very quirky. She was making a lot of weird, like, hand symbols, like, I don't know, I don't even know how to describe it, but if you go back and watch some of the ones in the beginning that we watched now, she's too happy to be in a situation like that right now for real, you know? And then also, something I didn't notice until going over this situation to make the video is that she put some really weird tags on some of these videos. Like the first couple posts that she made, she put #storytime, even though it wasn't a story time and she was pretending it was really happening right now. But she did drop that. I think she realized that would be giving it away too much. She stopped using #storytime after the first couple of posts. But on a couple of the other posts that she made, especially ones where she was talking about how serious things could gotten, one of them was a get ready with me. Who does a get ready with me while going through something like that? Like she was messing with her hair and putting her bandana on, putting on her, you know, she washed her face and she put stuff on her face, like doing this while talking about her husband going through a psychotic episode. Like, who does that? And then some of the other weird tags that I saw on these videos after, all the way up through to the last video she posted. #texting story. #me without makeup. #Olympics. #election 2024. So those last two, Olympics and election 2024, she put those on some of the last couple videos she did. And I think at that point she realized, I'm getting so many views from this. I gotta keep it going. Let's post some of the things people are talking about the most right now in the tags so that people that would have not normally seen this video are going to see it. So even more so, she was trying to make it so more and more and more people with each video were seeing her videos. And that, it's so messed up. Some other things I noticed about the way that she created these videos is that there was some where she put sad music behind herself talking. Specifically in the one where she admitted it was a reenactment, she put this really weird, like, sad vocalizing music behind herself talking. And sometimes it was even so loud you could barely hear her. Just shows she doesn't know anything about making videos, but she's, like, kind of mimicking what she's seen on, like, TV and movies, I think. She really did act like she was on a TV show with this. She also went on a weird tangent at one point while talking about her husband lending that woman the guitar for a week. She went on a tangent that she was not worried about him cheating on her and wasn't jealous of that woman. But who would even be thinking about something like that in that situation? Your husband is, like, not himself, and you're worried about if he's cheating or not. Honestly, I would not be worried about. That would be the last thing I would be thinking about. If my boyfriend was suddenly doing things like that, like talking about what he was talking about, giving away prized possessions to strangers, Even if he did cheat in that situation, I would not be worried about being mad at him for that or worrying about being jealous of the other woman, because obviously he's having a mental health episode. He doesn't know what the fuck he's doing. It just, oh my God, the fact that she was like going on tangents like that, if I had seen that, I would have known this was fake, or at least like not happening right now. But I didn't see these. And so, you know, and like many others, they also didn't see these. We believed her because it seemed real. One of the main reasons me and so many other people believed her was because she genuinely looked upset. Like when she was crying, she seemed upset, like she had a very red face. But now that I'm looking back on everything, I think she used blush to make herself look upset. I think she put blush on the tip of her nose and on her cheeks to make it look like she had been crying. And then because she said she's a theater kid, she's an actor, she may not be that great, but it looked like she was able to squeeze a couple tears out to make it look realistic. Like 2 tears over 10 minutes with a very red face. She looked upset. But the more and more you watch these videos after knowing that she was lying about everything, you can tell that it's a put on. Like, you honestly can. She's just, most of the time, she's making this face like, but she's not crying. She's not crying, and she has makeup on her face. This was never about awareness or helping others. Birdie did this to feed her own ego. She wanted to be famous. She wanted the likes, the attention, the followers, and the money. And she knew that if she posted beforehand, saying that this was a reenactment and then posted all her reenactment videos, that she would not get the attention that she wanted. It would be a lot smaller group of people that were watching. So she lied to self-benefit. She had been planning for months, since the moment he got out of the hospital, how she could use it to gain from it. One of the most horrible, traumatic things that happened to them. And she wanted to know how she could use it to help herself. And that just proves to me that she is a selfish person who only thinks about herself. Had Birdie actually told people beforehand that she was posting reenactment videos, yeah, she wouldn't have gotten as many views as she did, but the people that watched her would have likely stuck around. They would have celebrated her for telling her story and, you know, told her how happy that they are that her husband got help and that they're doing okay now. But because she chose to use deception instead, no one is ever going to trust her again. Even if she were to make a new account and come back like nothing happened, people are not going to forget about this. She will never be able to have a career on social media without people bringing this up to her. So she absolutely ruined any chance she ever had of wanting to be an internet personality. Birdie is always going to be the girl who cried wolf. And she has no one to blame but herself. She was right. People do get what they deserve, and this is exactly what she deserved. Okay, we got through it, guys. This one was really hard for me because I am still so freaking angry that she did this shit. And she hurt so many people. I can't stop thinking about the amount of people out there that are hurt because of her actions. But because I do actually care about the well-being of others, unlike Birdie, I'm going to have some resources listed at the top of the description. If you or anyone that you know is in need of help, please, please don't be scared to reach out through these resources, because, you know, there are people out there who actually do care about what you're going through and are also going through things, and, you know, we want you to stick around. I don't want anybody to be going through something because of the situation and then decide it's better to not stick around because, you know, because she's made things worse for everyone. But I needed to make sure people know about that, and hopefully now that she's gone, we can heal a little bit and try to move past this and do something good. Do something actually good, because we know that wasn't her intention. But all right, guys. Thanks for watching. Like this video and subscribe to my channel if you want more like this. Hopefully there isn't more like this to report on, but you know, there's always messed up stuff happening out there. And I would really like to make a video about something that isn't so depressing, but it's tough. There's so much crazy stuff happening right now. But yeah, thanks for watching, guys. I hope that you got something positive out of this, even though Birdie's horrible. Yeah, thanks for watching.